OTB AM.
With Gillette, proud supporters of Movember. Gentlemen, let's mow.
All right, let's mow indeed. Owen Sheehan, good morning to you. How are you?
Hello, Ger. How are things?
Everything is back. Back. How was your weekend?
Oof. God, that is a loaded question on a morning like this morning, isn't it? How was your weekend? It was packed with madness, really. It's very different to how lockdown number one was because of all these different emotions that are being pulled apart as a result of the various associations we have with sports teams. Everything was on the line, it seemed, at the weekend. And there were a lot of things to be happy about from a neutral perspective, a lot of things to be a little bit disappointed about, even when you're wearing your heart in a sleeve as a sports fan. And all in all, I think it was just chaos, really. I think it's one word you'd probably reach to describe a weekend like that.
Yeah, I think when the rain machine got switched on again in the second half, at the start of the second half in Páirc Uí Chaoimh last night, and it looked like that comedy rain that they have when they haven't spent enough money on the machine, because it looks so hard that it can only be fake. Real rain cannot look like that. You're looking at it going, holy moly, these guys are playing championship hurling. And the wide count is, I know they're getting given out to for the wide count being quite high in that first half, but actually it's amazing that they're able to manage to get the ball anywhere near the goals, let alone 25, 29 times each. It's ridiculous.
This is a really boring thing to say, but you're right about the rain, and it made me think to myself, God, those floodlights are sexy. Those floodlights that they have in Páirc Uí Chaoimh can do the job. We've seen enough crappy floodlights around the country that we're kind of like trying to spot players, even on television. Not at Páirc Uí Chaoimh. It is absolutely high definition 4K stuff as a result of those floodlights. That was a good moment. But you cannot look beyond Tyrone Donegal as your perfect moment of the weekend. It was like walking through a Renaissance art museum. Everywhere you looked, there was just blood and gore and madness and chaos. And it was so perfectly imperfect in every single way. It is exactly what we wanted to see from a winter championship. Everywhere you look, there was just a new character who would be introduced to us. You're like, oh, that person's now on the pitch. Oh, I didn't realize that person was starting. And they're doing something heroic, or they're doing something stupid, or they're doing something mad that the conditions won't dictate. And all these crazy things just going on. Like the spectrum of things that happened even from Donegal's perspective yesterday, like Owen Bawn Gallagher being unable to pick the ball up outside his goals, and yet Sean Patton launching the greatest kick out of all time. These two things occurred in the same game, and none of it makes any sense, but it was just perfect given the times we're in.
Yeah, and meaningful stuff as well, because all of the papers have somebody in them calling for Mickey Harte to step aside at this point, that he's put his time in, he is a legend, he has served his time, and it's time for a new voice and a bit of freshness to come into it. Do you think that is the last time that we've seen Mickey Harte, or will he stick it out for one last summer tour where he'll have the greatest forward line in the country if everybody's fit?
If this is a decision up to Mickey Harte, like I know he was non-committal on it yesterday, if it's a decision up to Mickey Harte, I think there's definitely enough incentive for him to hang around, because, as you say, next year he'll be looking at an All-Ireland tilt, and he'll feel that since 2008 maybe he has had a good enough team to win it again until next year, and he might feel that forward line will bring him over the line. So I can see Mickey Harte hanging around. I don't think people should be counting their chickens if they want Mickey Harte out, to be honest. I think that he's going to put up a fight, and I don't think the Tyrone people are going to fight against Mickey Harte. And you know what? There is maybe a point in that he is their greatest ever manager. As Pat Spillane said on the Sunday game yesterday, he'd have him in his top 4 Gaelic football managers ever, regardless of county. Does that person deserve a 19th year? You could argue maybe not, given recent performances of recent years, but maybe you could also make the case that he didn't have his full hand this year. And do you give one of the top 4 managers of all time his full hand and one last tilt with that? Maybe you do. So I don't think it's a sure thing that he is going to leave.
No, I don't think it is either. I think that he will definitely want to stay, and it'll be interesting to see if somebody does go against him. I think that's the bit that will be like over the long. It's going to feel like a very long winter now for them, watching everything that happens over the next couple of weeks, and the celebrations perhaps of a county other than Dublin for the first time in a long time, them thinking, oh, we were so close to this. But it is, I'm somewhat giving away some of our pressure rankings. It is a lot of pressure on a lot of people after that weekend. The pressure on Johnny Sexton as Ireland captain, and the pressure on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, which, you know, when you think about the conversation that we were having on this show last week about how, well, they were definitely going to give Solskjaer a long time. Now all of a sudden it's like, oh no, that's it. Pochettino's on Monday Night Football tonight, is that right?
Pochettino on Monday Night Football tonight. So he
Good
has
timing.
identified a shop window and has brought a sleeping bag and has gone to sleep on the shop window and is ready whenever Ed Woodward wants to knock on that window and purchase him for Manchester United. Solskjaer, this is a repetitive thing at this point, isn't it? That we talk after what tends to be a big game in the Premier League where Manchester United have failed to deliver. And once again, it was a match yesterday where Manchester United happened to have more of the possession and failed to win the game. It is a very repetitive thing at this point where if you allow Manchester United to break on you, if you allow them to get an early goal, there was a chance they will absolutely kill you. If you sit deep, which Arsenal are doing at the moment, and I guess park the bus to a certain point and try to break on them, there is a chance that Manchester United will get killed themselves. And they were by far the second best team on show yesterday. And it's not like Arsenal have been shooting the lights out in recent weeks either. It was a bad day for Solskjaer. But you do have to look at it as the very specific case of things that he needs to fix, which is if they can control possession and start winning games, they're onto a winner because they can beat the big teams. We've seen that time and time again. It's actually getting to that stage where Klopp was 2-3 years ago where, right, how do we win these games when we've got 50-something% of possession because they're struggling big time in those on a regular basis now.
Manchester United are currently 15th in the table and they are, so they're 4 points clear. 6 points clear of the relegation zone at the moment because obviously the teams in the relegation zone are playing so particularly badly this year. A fairly remarkable situation after 7 games when you would say, so they've only played 6, but you'd say that actually the season has started, the upsurge in form just recently, I thought had literally killed all the talk about the potential for him to be gone, that they were now in the type of conversation where, you can see what Solskjaer is trying to do, you can see what the squad is capable of. Are we still living week to week? Surely we're not. Surely, actually, this isn't real. And what we've learned is that the Manchester United hierarchy are not listening to this stuff.
Yeah, well, that's true. I think that we're not living week to week when it comes to the hierarchy's decisions around Solskjaer. I think that they've backed him over the long term and they'll continue to do so for the next little while at least. It's just about the tone and the writing and the commentary around Manchester United is definitely week to week at this point because the defeats have been sort of spectacular in the way that they've happened. Like, as in Manchester United have been so spectacularly bad when they've lost. Like, the 6-1 to Spurs is an obvious one. They were really, really poor yesterday. Like, all you got to do is listen to the angered Roy Keane's voice in Sky Sports after that defeat yesterday to kind of illustrate how poor they really were. Like, I mean, the Anthony Martial red card was key to them getting hammered 6-1 by Spurs. But 11 men on the pitch yesterday, they were really bad and really uninventive at times on that sort of scale against Spurs, a similar scale to that as well. Like you mentioned, the start of the season they've made. I think the last time they made as poor starts to the season, they ended up finishing 18th, which kind of puts into context how disastrous a Premier League league start this has been for Manchester United. And like, I don't know, the diamond was supposed to be the thing that saved them this week. You know, like almost like Adam Sandler stumbling across a glorious gem, and this was supposed to be the thing that saved their season over the next little while, this midfield, and they went with it in the first half. It didn't work. They shifted back to a 4-2-3-1 after half-time. That didn't work yesterday, and it seems that in these scenarios, he tries everything mid-game, and nothing really works as long as Manchester United are expected to win a game.
That didn't end well for Adam Sandler, that...
No, it didn't. It was very stressful as well. Really, really stressful.
It was. I watched it at the start of lockdown. It was the worst decision I ever made. Don't watch it. Wait until lockdown's over. Watch it on Christmas Day when everything in your life is happy and everything is grand and you know it's not going to have any impact on you. So let's talk about Johnny Sexton and the Irish team. Ireland, I thought, were blitzed. I know we keep hearing it's a few individual errors. It was a few individual errors in the game against England and Twickenham, but it wasn't. They were we were beaten by better teams. We weren't really in that game in a way that we think we were. We were like, let's pound away. Maybe we'll get a score here. Okay, we got a score. Great, we're back in the game. Oh, they just scored again. We've got to do it. Oh, wow. It's like, you know, all the stuff that you're supposed to do right to give yourself a foothold in the game we didn't do. And I'd be very concerned if I was Andy Farrell and the Brains Trust in charge of making this team a team capable of winning next season's Six Nations.
Well, that's the point then. You would be concerned if that's what your expectation is. You'd wonder, though, if our expectations as a rugby nation do change a little bit as a result of what we've seen post 2018. Now that there's been a bit of time for the dust to settle, now that there's been a bit of time for the form to be franked, outside of Leinster, really, it doesn't seem that there is an Irish team capable of actually winning consistently at the moment in the most important competitions. And I guess that's down to England's house being in order, much better than it was in 2018. And certainly France, who were trending in the right direction and looked far superior to Ireland skills-wise on Saturday night. And Donald Lenihan is making the point in the Irish Examiner this morning that Ireland are with Wales and Scotland now in almost a tier 2 within the Six Nations. And it is hard to disagree with him at that point. Now, of course, Andy Farrell's aim will be to win Six Nations championships. So, of course, he's under pressure if he wants to get back there, because it is hard to see Ireland competing properly with France and England in the One Six Nations campaign. Now, of course, next year's Six Nations, France and England come to Dublin, and it should be the year that you're able to compete like that. But this year, it was a collective deficit of 20 points against both of those teams. History will be kind to Ireland, because that will be the statistic that shows up. It should have been double that, really, the way Ireland should have lost across both of those games. Losing by 12 points against England and 8 against France really is a bit of an aberration in the full-time scoreline. And there are just a multitude of factors that you look at on Saturday night and think to yourself, God, Ireland are much off the pace at this point, and there is a lot of work to do to get back to the competitive level that they were at 2 years ago.
It's 7:41 this morning. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Isn't that right, Owen? You're looking about 12 years younger there.
Yeah. That's that beheading sound that you hear at the start of every morning was that was me. That was me last Friday as I sided open my chin 4 or 5 times.
Coming up on the show this morning, we have a jammer show between now and 10 o'clock for you. We're going to hear from Tommy Walsh and Ciarán Carey on the hurling. Kieran Donaghy talking to us about the football. David Meyler talking about Manchester United and Arsenal, Spurs and Liverpool, obviously. Alan Quinlan on the rugby is up next. If you want to get in touch, 0879 180 180 is the number. We also have the pressure rankings coming your way at about 9 o'clock this morning. And we're also giving away an Ireland jersey, courtesy of Umbro. Let me get you the competition details. So all this week on OTBAM, brilliant prize up for grabs. It's the brand new Ireland football jersey, the first time without a sponsor in 30 years. All you have to do to win is identify our mystery voice.
When their guy come up, I think his name was Tim Offday. Tim Offday, his name was, who took the penalty. That was an ex-Republic of Ireland captain, played for Villa, Norwich and Chelsea. It's all thanks to Umbro, official kit sponsor to the FAI. If you don't win this morning, you can get your sponsorless Ireland football jersey over at faishop.com now. And the entry number is 0879 180 180. Phil, good morning to you. How are you?
Hey, Ger, how are you doing?
Well, busy weekend. Where are we starting?
Yeah, absolutely. Bumper weekend. We'll start with the GAA. Obviously, the championship stepped up a few gears this weekend. A few teams are already out of the championship, and I think it was clear to see over the weekend as well how conditions in a November championship are going to be key, because there was wind and rain everywhere. But one thing to keep an eye on this morning is the draw for the first round of the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship qualifiers, due to take place after 8:30. All-Ireland Hurling Champions Tipperary will be in that draw, along with Cork, Clare, Dublin, Wexford and Laois, because Munster champions Limerick got the better of Tip in the big game yesterday in hurling on a scoreline of 323 to 217 in their Munster semi-final. Donegal are into the Ulster Senior Football Championship semi-finals following a 113 to 111 win over Tyrone. So Tyrone, one of those teams that are already out of the championship. Donegal will face Armagh in 2 weeks' time. Armagh got the better of Derry by 17 points to 15. Mayo booked their place in the Connacht semi-finals with a 2-15 to 10 points win over Leitrim. Longford, Offaly and Wicklow all advance in the Leinster Football Championship. Tipperary beat Clare by 211 to 111 in the quarterfinals of the Munster Football Championship. And in the Camogie Championship, All-Ireland champions Galway beat Offaly by 313 to 3 points, and that game was in Group 1. Plenty of Premier League action as well yesterday. Tottenham up to second place following a 2-1 win at home to Brighton last night. Gareth Bale came off the bench to score the winner in the second half. A few head-scratching decisions made by Graham Scott in that game. If you haven't seen the goal that was given to Brighton, it was a challenge on Højbjerg, which Graham Scott was there to see, then went to look at it on his monitor, didn't overturn his decision, but Gareth Bale got the win for Spurs. No home wins for Manchester United in the Premier League this season. Despite that emphatic win over Leipzig in the Champions League during the week, United were back to their Premier League form at Old Trafford yesterday. They lost 1-0 to Arsenal at Old Trafford. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang scored a second half penalty, after Paul Pogba had brought down Hector Bellerin. It's back-to-back defeats for Everton as well. They lost 2-1 to Newcastle at St James's Park, and 7 goals scored at Villa Park. Southampton 4-3 winners against Aston Villa. Southampton were 4-0 up in that game at one stage. Tonight, Leicester can go up to second place if they win away to Leeds. That game at Elland Road kicks off at 8 o'clock. And 2 teams without a win this season, Fulham and West Brom, get underway at 5:30. Champions Shamrock Rovers won 2-0 away to Finn Harps last night in the SSE Airtricity Premier Division, with a finish 1-1 between St Pat's and Dundalk. Dundalk still have some work to do to claim third spot in the league. Manchester City retained the Women's FA Cup. They won 3-1 against Everton after extra time at Wembley. And finally to rugby, Ulster and Leinster both in Guinness Pro 14 action tonight. Ulster are away to the Cardiff Blues, and that game in Wales kicks off at 6 o'clock. Rhys Ruddock will captain Leinster as they look to continue their 100% start of the season. They are away to Glasgow Warriors. That one gets underway at 8:15. Munster won yesterday. They beat the Dragons in Wales 28-16.
Feel good stuff, Monday Night Rugby. It's a new welcome addition to the slate of things for us to watch. Alan Quinlan, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, Ger. How are you?
I'm good. Let's talk about the difference in quality between the two teams. We're all feeling a little bit like it's the end of the world. There's always a massive overreaction to defeat in big matches like this when something is up for grabs. But maybe this time it's not an overreaction. Maybe we are a good bit behind France at the moment.
I don't think we're a good bit behind. I think there was a lot of positive signs, particularly in the first half on Saturday night. I thought the Irish team played particularly well. It was, showed signs of the dominance and the way they played in 2018 when they were very successful with the application, the intensity, the energy of the team. And sport can be crazy at times. I think you don't get rewarded always for that intense, and Ireland didn't in that first half. I think the concern for me would be mentally. Robbie Henshaw said at the start of the week that he didn't want the team he was hoping the team wouldn't go into their shells when they were put under pressure, and you're always going to get put under pressure in Paris. But the performance in the second half compared to the first was a complete contrast, and very concerning, I suppose. And the mistakes, the simple mistakes, they weren't. Sometimes when you're always going to be under pressure, and I said this in commentary, France were always going to get their moments in the game and their period of pressure, and that's what would define whether Ireland would win the game. And I just felt that Ireland had to work incredibly hard to hold on to the ball and get the scores that they got in the first half compared to France. Their tries were just much too easy. So it's a worry, I think. But there's a number of players missing, and the depth is really being challenged now on the team. I think the impact off the bench wasn't good enough, and that's not being disrespectful to the players. They all went on and tried their hardest, but it's just we needed a little bit more quality and more quality with the ball in that second half. And when Ireland got it back to 28-20, they had a line out 7 or 8 yards out, and it was a complete timing issue. It wasn't if France went up and robbed the ball. Dave Heffernan threw the ball in when James Ryan was gone up into the air, and that was costly, very costly. So there was a lot of mistakes there.
Can we focus on the line-out, because that's one of the things I haven't heard too much discussion about since. That's a collective systems failure. Is that ultimately rests with the coach, or and I don't mean Farrell. Is that you might know exactly who is ultimately responsible for coaching the line-out? Is it the forwards coach, and so therefore is it Easterby?
Yeah, well, he'll look back and he'll ask questions of the players. I think at that level, they're international players. They've got to run the line out themselves, particularly out on the field. That it frustrates me so much to see that, because that's down to the players out on the field, switching off a little bit, not getting the timing right. And, they lost that line out, went down the field, lost another line out with a bad call to the tail of the line out where France stole the next line out. And that's game gone. That's game over for me, because you don't get many opportunities away from home. And I think that one where Stander forces the penalty to kick into the corner, France are on the back foot. They're a little bit standoffish at that stage, and they're getting a little bit nervy. Ireland are coming back and throwing everything at it, and then you just make a terrible error like that, and it can have an awful psychological blow to the team that are attacking. So there's issues right across the board. I think you can take lots of positives from the first half, but just the composure under pressure was a real issue. And 16 turnovers conceded. The stats are crazy, Ger. If you look at this match, Ireland had 60% possession and 64% territory. France just got easy tries then. You'll always get a bit of brilliance there, but you could nearly go through every try and say it was preventable. And France should have had to work harder to get those scores, because I suppose on first and second phase, Ireland defended very well. But, Bundyaki kicking away the ball there in the second half. Ball goes down the field. Sexton kicks it back. Andrew Conway, who's normally brilliant under the high ball, sprints up, but just seems to get his awareness wrong, and Boutia catches it clean, and suddenly they're scoring in the opposite corner. When Ireland were on the attack, there are things you look back a couple of phases and you say, well, you get punished at international level for that stuff. So giving the ball away easily when you have it, because you have to work incredibly hard to get the ball. Jacob Stockdale in the first half, I think that was a massive psychological blow. He knocked one on just a couple of minutes before it. He knocks on the ball, then hesitates to go down on it. They get a penalty try. So Ireland concede 7 points and have Caelan Doris in the bin for 10 minutes, So there's a lot of moments in that game that they'll be very frustrated about. And I think there is a depth issue. The number of players that are missing, did make a difference. But that was a game Ireland could have won if they were much smarter in that second half.
Should an international team be allowed to have such big psychological blows happen to them as a result of those mistakes? Should they have a better ability to be able to get over these things that happen in a game?
Yeah, you can say yes, and then you could say no, because it's difficult, even with the most experienced teams on. They're the moments, they're the things you talk about in games. I remember that from my own career, that being in dressing rooms with lots of good leaders and successful winners, I suppose, and guys who had a real desire, and all the time was how you react when the opposition are putting pressure on you, when they have the ball, when you're hanging on your own line, making good decisions. And that's what makes brilliant teams. And that's stuff that this group have to learn. There's a lot of change, and there's certainly a transitional period of change happening within the team. A number of young, newer players coming into the group, and that will probably continue right through the Nations Cup. But it's down to just a reading of the game and staying calm and composed in those areas. The simple mistakes, like the line-out, are the ones that just, you just win the bloody ball simply, stay in the opposition half. Even if Ireland get a penalty there, kick it over the bar and it's 28-23, it makes the opposition nervy. Whereas you lose the line-out, they go down the field and they're scoring under a try a couple of minutes later from 2 lost line-outs. Knock-ons. The ball, in fairness, in defence for ball going loose in the tackle and stuff, and guys dropping balls, the ball was very, very greasy. But psychologically, they've got to be more ruthless. And look at 18. I know we keep going back to it, but you just sense that Ireland had that composure, had that ruthlessness, didn't panic under pressure when the opposition were rattling away at them, and they've got to try and find a way to get back to that. But that takes a bit of time, and they're rebuilding again.
Well, let's tease that out, right? Because in 18 we had Joe Schmidt, and it was the Joe Schmidt mantra of him controlling everything, all the decisions, nothing was left to chance. The notion of us playing heads-up rugby was never spoken about, right? Now we're trying to play a different style, and it's leading to pods going up in the air early, knock-ons, players randomly kicking the ball forward, other players breaking out of the line and not doing what they normally do well. Like, the one thing that you can say about all that is that there's an uncertainty of outcome, whereas previously we were very sure about when situation A presents itself, we're going to do B or C, but that's it. There's not like a menu list of opportunities for us. So maybe Joe Schmidt was the magic glue that held us together.
But he made the players confident. He showed them stuff in videos that They went out and did in the field, and they got a result from it. So confidence is a massive thing at any level, and at the top level in sport, it's still a big factor. If you're confident and your body language is really good, and you have to figure out how to wear down the opposition psychologically. And that was a lot of young players in that French team who don't have the baggage of and maybe the negativity of French teams gone by, because France haven't won a championship since 2010. They've been dreadful in lots of the last 10 years. Loads of optimism this year for sure. That performance against England in round 1. So they're kind of they're not weighed down by that expectation. There's a massive change going on there, and a lot of talent in that French side. Whereas Ireland are carrying baggage probably from the World Cup, the last Six Nations previous to that, and there's a number of players there. So they're trying to force it a little bit, and I felt they forced it a little bit in that second half. So it's an area where they just got to collectively be better. And maybe we're not good enough in some areas. I don't think the depth isn't where it was. There's no doubt about that. And so that's something that Andy Farrell is going to have to develop. And Mike Catt, John Fogarty, Easterby, they're going to have to get some new blood in around the group. And that's something that's going to happen. But I heard Paul speaking post-match about the change that's happening in the way they're trying to play. And I think he made a very valid point about they're trying to be expansive and change a little bit. But Cup Rugby, it was kind of Cup Rugby the other night. They didn't have to get a bonus point win. So territory is important, playing in the right areas. And they did a lot of that well. But the second half, they didn't do those simple things that Joe was renowned for putting pressure on, being really efficient at the breakdown, protecting the ball, not giving it away easily. So they kind of went one way and forgot a little bit about, mounting pressure and building pressure on the opposition.
Yeah.
But France were very good, and listen, you're always going to go to Paris and say, well, it's going to be difficult. But I thought Ireland were the architects of their own downfall in that second half.
And that's always worrying. That's always worrying. Let's talk about Sexton, because I want to play you this clip. It's James Downey and Fiona Steed on yesterday's OTB. Here they are talking about Sexton's response to being replaced at the weekend, which has been the subject of a lot of talk. Have a look at this.
Look, he wears his heart on his sleeve, and I mean, I suppose maybe he could have known that the cameras would pan to him, but of course he's frustrated, disappointed with the way the game was going, probably disappointed with some elements of his own game. I think it's understandable, and I think we can make more out of this than needs to be. Like, jeepers, anybody, even, I don't know, apart from maybe thirds teams players, nobody wants to come off a rugby pitch. The under-10s don't want to come off when they're swapping them around, when they're playing blitzes and stuff. Like, that's why we play sport. But yes, he does need to come off at times, or maybe not start. And we need to look at the bigger picture piece. I still think he's the best 10 that we have, absolutely. I think that he is probably the best leader that we have. I do think we need to start other people, because if he's injured and if he doesn't make it to 2023 and all of these pieces, and absolutely, I don't think he should start all of the next 3 games. I think we really do need to, to work on others as backup to that. And I think that's normal, and that has to be part of it, and that's the conversation that has to happen. Should he still be captain, Alan, do you think?
I'm not sure. I think that's not the issue the other night, is Johnny Sexton being captain. I think there's definitely a valid argument to say that, look, maybe now is the time to find a young captain that's going to take us through to the 2023 World Cup. We've probably made mistakes before of probably not introducing players and throwing enough of players in that early enough for the World Cup. We're 3 years out from a World Cup, so maybe it's time to make that change. What are you going to learn in the next few weeks in the Nations Cup? You're going to try and get more experience for some of the younger players. Ryan Baird will come into the group. James Lowe is probably going to get his first cap. There's maybe another few people. Ronan Kelleher needs more game time for Ireland at that level at hooker. So I don't think it's a major issue that we got to change the captaincy. But for me, I said it even before the start of the Six Nations last year and after the World Cup, that James Ryan is the obvious candidate for me. He's a guaranteed starter every time. But I don't have an issue with Johnny Sexton. I think he's an incredible player. He's an incredible leader. He can be a little petulant at times, for sure, and sparky. But I thought it was a mistake to take him off on Saturday night. Ireland are 8 points down, a real tough competitor. The gap, it's different if Carberry's on the bench and he's coming on. And with all due respect to Ross Byrne, there's still a massive difference between our starting fly half and the backup and Jack Carty and the other players that are behind. I don't think it's a major issue. And should he be captain? Should we now just go, oh, well, he shouldn't be captain? It depends on what Andy Farrell sees right. I think it's nearly time. It may be the time might be right to bring James Ryan in, make him captain. Maybe wait till the Six Nations and see how that goes. But in the next few weeks, there'll be a certain number of changes in the team, so you might see a couple of different captains for some of the different selections. But
yeah, that makes sense. Alan, we're almost completely out of time, but on balance, so we now have a full Six Nations, and okay, it's very difficult to put the whole thing together and look at it, but take a step back. We do have a full Six Nations of what Andy Farrell's Ireland is. What's your judgment on that so far?
Well, they won 3 games. I think it's always the case. It's always going to be hard going to England and Paris, to Twickenham and Paris. So I just think England showed that there is a gap, and we've got to try and close that gap in the next couple of years for sure, and be more competitive when we play England. The regret the other night is that French team were there to be beaten. They weren't absolutely brilliant. Of course, they've individual brilliance, but I just think the mistakes in the second half will Ireland will learn from that, and it's just frustrating now. But they're back on track for Friday week. And if I could just say quickly before, I know we're out of time, but I thought the reaction to Johnny Sexton being taken off and everyone saying that he showed bad leadership is absolute rubbish. I think he showed exactly what you want right across the board. I know at times he can be criticised for his reactions, but he's frustrated, and I have no issue with that. So I just want to say that I have no issue with his reaction coming off, and that's the way he should be.
Is it not disrespectful to Ross Byrne? Like all that stuff about?
No. What do you want him to do? Start hugging Ross Byrne?
I want him to get off as quick as possible, because the coach has made the decision to say, I think my job is to win this game, and in my judgment, because I know the squad better than everybody else, I'm taking you off because you're not doing what I want you to do, and actually putting Ross Byrne on gives us a better chance of winning here.
Well, I don't think he deserved to be taken off. So for me, he's entitled to that reaction.
Are you? Because that's like.
Yeah, you are.
But then, is that not lawlessness, Alan? Is that not the whole point, where literally everybody can start huffing and puffing? And what's the whole point? So next time he's in the huddle as captain, saying we're going to go out there and we're going to do this for each other. Is Ross Byrne not looking at him going, you don't mean that? You're going to throw your toys out of the pram if I get subbed on for you?
I don't think Ross Byrne, he doesn't have an issue with Ross Byrne. He handed him the ball. He's nodding his head as he's closer to the touchline. He's not nodding his head going towards Ross Byrne. He handed him the ball and walked off, and it's then. So I don't think so. Everyone has an opinion on it. I don't think so. And I've been critical of Johnny before sometimes, his reactions. I think that shows an incredible desire, and it's hard to keep your emotions in check there. He shouldn't have been taken off. It's as simple as that. And I don't think it's like 2 kids in a playground that you're passing the ball over and they're adults. Ross Byrne is already out on the halfway line when Johnny Sexton is close to the touchline, nodding his head. That's what I think. Okay. I don't think so then it's come off smiling and high-fiving people.
I don't expect that either, because we're getting beaten. But get off quickly and get it. Don't be the centre of attention. Don't become the story. But actually, I'd say Andy Farrell's probably pretty happy that the focus is on Sexton as opposed to Farrell's decision to take Sexton off.
Yeah, well, the attention is on Sexton because the camera is on him, really. So it's not his fault. That's just the way he is, and that's what's made him such a great player over the years. So I think a little bit too much. I agree in some sense with what you're saying. Okay. Some people would love to see him, patting Ross Byrne on the back and giving him positive messages. But look, it's difficult to do that. So that's just the reality. Andy Farrell, I think, it's a big call. It's a big call to make. And if it works out and if Rossmorn does some brilliance out in the field and they win the game, well, he's justified. But I just think when you're 8 points down there, I thought it was the wrong call at the time. But look, you live and die by the sword, don't you? Coaches and players do.
But look, I do think that maybe we could have had a bigger conversation about Farrell's decision-making there and his decision-making generally across some of that as well. So look, we have plenty of time because there's nothing else to talk about.
Well, he should have brought Chris Farrell on and he should have taken off Jacob Stockdale and put Andrew Conway to full back. I think that would have been a big call to make at half-time. Jacob Stockdale looked nervous. He'd made those mistakes. And I think getting Chris Farrell out in the field would have been and should be an option going forward because he offers a huge amount in attack. Yeah,
I definitely we can tease that out as well. Alan, good stuff. Thanks a million. 6 minutes past 8 here this morning. It's Alan Quinlan's thoughts on the weekend's rugby. Loads of thoughts from you guys coming in as well. Wayne Ryan says Sexton's attitude of being sub was childlike. He saw himself on the screen and started shaking his head. My man knows how he plays. It's very predictable. Paulie on Twitter says it's time to change the line out and let some of the new up-and-coming players get game time. A clear out is needed. 0879 180 180 is the number if you want to get in touch with us here. And so OTBAM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. We have a really busy hour coming ahead. Going to hear from Tommy Walsh. Going to chat to Kieran Carey. Kieran Donaghy is going to join us shortly, and we're back with the football next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Looking for a football show with a bit of a twist? Team 33, the football magazine show for the football purists.
And it's been a complete failure for English teams in the European formats this year, Colin.
I don't know.
Come on, it has! They had one team in the quarter-final.
The very best interviews with the cult heroes of the past and a look at the cultural side of football. Team 33, live at 9 p.m. every Friday on OTB Sports Radio. Live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
The all-new OTB Sports app. It's all videos, sports news, live scores, interviews, podcasts, all waiting for you. Search OTB Sports on your app store and download now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, proud supporters of Movember. Gentlemen, let's move.
OTB AM.
7 minutes past 8 here this morning. I'll tell you what's on otbsports.com. It is Paul Pogba says he gave away a penalty to Arsenal, but he was a bit out of... I can't see the headline, the rest of the headline on that one. God help us. Roy Keane pulls no punches after Manchester United's lost performance. And we also have Tommy Walsh talking about Kilkenny and Leinster. TJ Reid is an absolute wizard. We're going to hear from that in just a moment's time as well. Very quickly, the back pages of the papers. It's Paul Pogba on the back of the tabloids. It's Mickey Hart on the back of the Irish papers. Hart silent on his Tyrone future, and a picture of him wearing his mask yesterday. And that's really it. Some of the columns are calling for Johnny Sexton to lose the captaincy in that one. So our Mystery Voice competition all this week here on OTBAM, a brilliant prize up for grabs. It's the New Ireland shirt for the first time without a sponsor in 30 years. It's your chance to get your hands on it. To win this morning, you need to WhatsApp us 087 9180 180 with this guy's name and your name. Have a listen.
When their guy come up, I think his name was Timofte. Timofte, his name was, who took the penalty.
One of our penalty takers on the day. It's all thanks to Umbro, official kit sponsor to the FAI. If you don't win this morning, you can get your sponsorless Ireland football jersey over at faishop.com. Kieran Donaghy, good morning to you.
Morning, Ger, how are you?
I'm very well. What a weekend of Gaelic football. You were at the game of the weekend, essentially.
Yeah, we were, yeah. It was, Kevin Monaghan probably was the game of the weekend. There was a sick part of me hoping for a penalty shootout and the drama that would have brought the proceedings, but Raymond Galligan had other ideas and kicked a 55 or 60-yard screamer to send Kevin through and to beat their dearest rivals 2 years in a row. So it's a loss that'll sting Benty and it'll sting Monaghan, but Kevin richly deserved for what they did late on, and probably Monaghan drew it on themselves at what went on.
Yeah, how much of this was Monaghan's fault?
A lot of it. I was with Jim McGuinness in the skybox. He was kind of losing his mind at the aimless kind of retention of ball that Monaghan were doing. Yes, they were retaining it, but they never looked like adding to the score. They didn't look like they even wanted to add to the 7-point lead. You know, there's two ways to look at it. You're 7 points up. You kind of say to yourself, okay, for the first 5 or 6 minutes of the second half, if we can kick 3 or 4 points, we'll put this to bed. We'll be 10 or 11 up, and they'll throw in the towel. But to be honest, that third quarter was the worst third quarter of football I've seen so far this year. Kevin didn't push up in the kickouts and didn't overly push up on Monaghan. So it was just this 18 minutes of kind of crazy stuff, really. Every time Monaghan got the ball, they sprinted back towards their own goal to where the extra bodies were. And I get it, you want to hold on to the ball, but you have to have some plan to that when you get up to the 45 that you still have to try and go score. And there was several times they were at the 45 and their first instinct when they got the ball was to turn and sprint 20 yards backwards. So it's a lot their fault. I wouldn't actually I don't know how much of it I'd put down to Banty. I'm sure the messages at half-time was be smart, hold on to the ball. Again, lads, you know, how much time have fellas had to work on this strategy this year? You know, how much training have they had together in the new management to say, okay, if we're up 7 or 8 points in a game and we want to see it out, there's a few things we want to do. We want to hold on to the ball. We want to be careful. We want to have someone back around the house. But when we get up to the forward line, let's try and do A, B, and C. So I don't know, it was as simple as a kind of a message to hold the ball, and the team literally took the words of the management. And to be honest, looking in at the third quarter and the middle quarter, it seemed to be, you know, Conor Laverty and the backroom team doing a lot of the talking as well. So I really don't know why it went so negative for them. And then, you know, Kevin weren't too smart either. You know, yes, they got the 6 points back in the last 10 minutes, but you know, that intermittent the third quarter for them was very poor in what they were doing as well. They weren't pushing up. They weren't being hungry enough. They were just kind of happy to run around after Monaghan. But you know, they did push up eventually after the third quarter. The message obviously came through that we had to push up in the kickouts. They had to push up on the sweeper. The sweeper was getting a lot of short kickouts. And once they started going long, I think Monaghan had 9 kickouts in the last quarter, and Cavan won 7 of them, and was a great platform. And that's what gave him the lead. And Thomas Galligan came on in the midfield, and he was just ginormous out there.
Did Monaghan get overly obsessed with what direction the wind was blowing in? Because it seemed that they were just reluctant to attack that goal when the wind was blowing in their face. It might have been as much to do with that as it was to do with clinging onto the lead, because it did seem bizarre at times.
Yeah, you might have seen in the report card I did for Off the Ball after the game, you know, I said the poor inside forward line from Monaghan must have been ready to pull their hair out, because you had young O'Hanlon, who was outstanding in the first half. I thought he should have got a penalty. He was industrious in everything he did. He had 2 assists. He kicked a lovely point. He just looked dangerous. You've obviously McManus, who'd won 3, who was outstanding. And you Conor McCarthy in the other half, who chipped over a point, but that was looking dangerous enough. So that's a really good inside forward line. So, but yeah, you know, they never used them in that first period in the second half, and it set into the team. It was infectious, the bad play, and it was sloppy, and like Monaghan, even in the last quarter, did 3 or 4 terrible turnovers going across their own middle of the field, trying to kick crossfield passes and slicing them off the boot. Cavan guys coming onto them. But the problem was when Cavan came onto it a lot of time, they'd actually nobody up front to drive on and kick a ball into a match winner. So they were having to carry it back down the pitch. So it was like watching a slow game of tennis for a long periods of that second half. But once Cavan got the spark, and the spark was Galligan in the middle of the field, and he kicked a lovely point. And look, they had a few big scores. The right back Brady kicked an absolute monster on the outside of the right boot to tie it, but you could tell when they started chipping away, Martin O'Reilly got a crucial point that kind of narrowed it to 3, and now they really were within striking distance, and you could just see the belief. And Monaghan couldn't go back; they couldn't find their way back to the way they played so well in the first half. Yes, the wins is a factor, and Rob is going to say that, but it can't be that much where, you know, it just stops you playing, and you know, you completely change absolutely the facets of your games. You can look at it maybe pressing up if you're playing with the breeze because the keeper's kicking it out against it. You can look at certain little things. That's why, you know, I was disappointed with Mickey Graham and Cavan at it earlier in the second half, that they weren't pushing up, and because they were down 7 points, and it's do or die. You don't have it tomorrow, so you have to take. I prefer to lose by 10 points than lose by 6 points. I'd prefer to lose by 10 if I was doing the right things to try and claw it back, and we got hit in the counter attack or whatever. I'd take that, but just aimlessly going through a third quarter like they did, where, you know, they went from 7 down to 6 down. That's not enough, but their last 10 minutes was outstanding, and Mickey has to get the credit for eventually pushing up in them and winning more kickouts and kicking, and a great composure on their score zone. And
I had a question.
Go.
From the ground, and as a player who's been in matches like that, how aware are you guys of the exact amount of time that's left? Because Cavan were very relaxed, it seemed, about clawing that team back, whereas the next day we saw a team panic with about 7 or 8 minutes left to go in Tyrone, trying to pull back a 2-point lead. It made no sense to me. Like, is it just ignorance? And I don't mean that in a bad way, but like pure. Yeah. You don't. We're sitting at home watching the clock tick, 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 tick. There is no, or is there a clock? Do they constantly have to keep asking the referee what's the story?
There is a clock. There is a clock at all the games. There is a little time thing up on there. But look, I've made this point before that through basketball and game management, that it was something that I was always constantly aware of. Even when I played, there would have been venues where there would have been no time. So I'd be constantly asking the ref, or I'd constantly be shouting out to teammates to ask the ref what's left. I always wanted to know what was left, because I felt it decided on many ways what way you were going to go about your business. So yeah, look, there was they did have great composure late on, but and you're right, and Tyrone did panic late on yesterday. Even Marty Marcy was panicking in the commentary box at 70 minutes. He was saying with Donegal with a 2-point lead, and he kind of said Tyrone need a goal now, like, you know, and I was saying no, they don't. They need to clip over. They need to clip over their 2 points.
But the match yesterday was 4 points, and they managed to get it in stoppage time. Like, come on, pay attention to this stuff. Yeah,
absolutely. And no, it did help that you know, the breeze in Clonus, and we all know going into the bottom goals, and we saw McManus fire over a few buttes in the first half. But when you're playing into that scoring goals in Clonus, once you get the flight of a going jar at the post, the wind seems to kind of carry it over for you. So maybe they didn't have that in Ballybuffet, but there was certainly panic. You know, I think Tyrone late on taking off McCurry and Canavan probably lost that insight that they could go to craft the score or to work a free. And look, it was disappointing for them because they certainly did panic, and they were so close, Ger. Like Tyrone could win that game 6 times out of 10, you know, and that's considering they were very limited in the possession they got around the middle of the field. They still could have won that game if they'd have taken their chances a bit better. So they'll be sore this morning on the back of that.
One tactical question I have, Kieran, is like you mentioned Cavan's kick out or Cavan going against the kick out with the wind at their back and not pushing up, which is obviously criminal. But if you look at the situation in Donegal against Tyrone yesterday and Michael Langan's goal, that comes with Sean Patton with the wind at his back. So what do you do when you're facing a goalkeeper like Patton with a foot like a traction engine with the wind at his back? Do you push up on that kick out, or do you not? What is the right thing to do in that situation?
I don't think you do, and I think what Mickey Graham probably has to get the most credit for over the weekend is the job that he did on Rory Beggan, who's a match winner for Monaghan, and the job he did in him was extremely good, because he completely negated his influence with the breeze, which has been very frustrating for Beggan. Now you have a guy who can kick the ball 70 or 80 yards through the eye of a needle. And he's been forced to take 20-yard kickouts to his cornerbacks, and that was really good by Mickey Graham. The only issue I have is that the push up in the second half didn't come slightly quicker. But of course, you look at what Patton did. You look at a few of the points Tyrone got even. We're coming off of Niall Morgan 70 or 80-yard bombs hitting the deck, flying over fellas' heads and inside to forward. So there is a huge difference in how you set up, I would say, versus kickouts. And in fairness, Kevin McStay, he made a good point yesterday that the ref should start looking at calling these water breaks on live play rather than kickouts, because it does give team it's a minute timeout to organise what you're going to do and try and push up in this kickout. So it's the breeze and the wind and the conditions are going to have a huge factor going forward in this championship. And teams do have to prepare slightly different, that if they're playing with that big breeze at their back, how can they pin a team in? How can you push up where the keeper's kickouts are dropping kind of nearly backwards down from the sky because the breeze is so big? So there is certain ways that you can look to attack a team But I thought Mickey Graham in the first half for Cavan. And you have to think about it, Cavan had a 1-2 to a point lead in that game. Monaghan just really took control with about 10 minutes to go and made that lead from a level or game or a point up to 7 points at half time. They had a really strong finish to the half. But I still think, Mickey Graham would have been happy with how they negated Began in the first half. And then when they pushed up on them late on, that had a huge influence on how the game changed.
We can talk about Donegal and how well equipped that group of players are going to be to deal with those weather conditions. But I just want to bring everybody what Sean Kavanagh is saying today in the Star. He's saying it's now the right time for Mickey to call it a day. And I don't think he went quite this far on the telly last night, but certainly he's saying, Mickey, a legend, absolutely, and deserves all the praise for that. But the long and the short of it is, we shouldn't be afraid to embrace change, is the line. And the change is coming in the form of a new manager. Or is it? Because Mickey Harte probably doesn't want to leave now.
Yeah, well, look, it's, as I said, look, the only thing I think Mickey Harte, the two things I think Mickey Harte did wrong yesterday, and look, we're all humans, and it's very easy to sit in here on a Monday morning and discuss what guys did wrong in the heat of championship battle. But maybe McKenna too close to goal for too long. I think they could have afforded to bring him out and maybe leave him a Curry and a Canavan inside, and just McKenna's kick passing, as we've seen, has been outstanding. So maybe him getting him out there, because when McGee came off, when McGee went off at half time, we were kind of looking okay. But in fairness, Brennan did an equally impressive job, and Stephen McMiniman at different stages marking those two guys. So I think that was one mistake. And yeah, just with how they the use of getting your two kind of sharpest guys that would score, that would chip over free or just have the guile to work something coming off. That was a mistake, I think. But other than that, Tyrone's goal chances, like Peter Harte is an experienced player, didn't have a great game, which is probably why he snatched at his shot when he was going through. He knew he wasn't going well, and all of a sudden, if you can stick that ball into the top corner, maybe you start feeling better about yourself. You give your team an injection. He went for that. Maybe another solo. You the sharpshooter McKenna, who's shown how versatile he is in front of goals. We saw him against Mayo last week, jinking and faking on his right and going onto his weaker left and putting it in off the post. Like that kind of finishing ability. If you're Peter Harte and you keep driving there and your keeper comes out and the other defender gets to the line, well, then you have a simple 6 or 7 yard hand pass to McKenna, who's looking at a corner back in the goals and will undoubtedly score. A goal at that stage would have won the game. Sean has been inside in Mickey Harte's dressing room, and if he's saying it, we kind of have to take stock in it, because he was there for the whole thing. And if he, what Mickey Harte brought to Tyrone, the All-Ireland success, he's 6 Ulster Championships, Ger, in an era where you had the great Armagh team in the early noughties, or in the noughties there, they were prime candidates every year. You have the Donegal team under McGuinness and now under Bonner, who had 3 and 4 Ulster Championships each. You had a good Monaghan team in the middle. You'd Derry and Down, who came with very good teams, who got to quarterfinals and finals. So to have 6 Ulster Championships in 17 years is unbelievable going. So he rebuilt a young team, a young hungry team. He built a young hungry team coming out of his under 21 in his minor days, and he took him right to the best place in the land, winning 3 All-Irelands, beating their dearest rivals Armagh in 03, and obviously beating Kerry in 05 and 08, which is a nice 3 All-Irelands to have if you're going to have 3. They probably wouldn't pick better opposition to beat in Tyrone in that. So the success he's had has been unbelievable. And even look back, 2 years ago, he'd a very young, kind of inexperienced Tyrone side sitting inside in an All-Ireland final, losing by 6 points to a very good Dublin team. He had him in another semi-final against Dublin. They had 2 semi-finals in 15 and 19 against Kerry. We're talking about this in the most dominant Dublin team in the era, and a very dominant Kerry team in the early part of the 2000s. So he's navigated his way through all that to constantly be getting these teams in the position to have a chance. There was the early part of the 2010s where that great team were finished and they were gone, and there was a few years where they weren't really as competitive. But yeah, you're right. He's probably looking at it now, where he's looking at McShane coming back next year. He's looking at McKenna. He's looking at young Dara Kavanagh. He's a half-forward line of McGeary, Conor Meyler, maybe McKenna at centre forward, Sludden coming back in. You know, he's Hampsey, Burns.
Yeah, they're good.
Kennedy was good. Yeah, they're good, and he might want another shot at that. And you know, for a guy who's done everything in the game, I love the loyalty Tyrone have shown him. Very like Brian Cody, and I know Brian Cody has won more All-Ireland, but Brian Cody's coming from a Kilkenny who are very used to success, a la Kerry in the football. They're used to winning All-Irelands, and if you don't get a few All-Irelands, you're out the door. Whereas Mickey Hart was coming from a team that never won an All-Ireland. And, you know, it's Sean being in the dressing room, you have to take note to what he's saying. But there's a part of me loves the way Tyrone have been loyal to this manager in a time where, like, Mickey Hart's not to blame for yesterday's loss, lads. Let's call a spade a spade. He is not. They made tons of mistakes. They had a chance. When Kavanagh got the goal in the 41st minute, they really had a chance to push on and win the game. They were sloppy after that. Donegal kicked 4 or 5 massive points and got them and wrestled the momentum back. But at that stage, Canavan had just pipped over a big point. Then he got the goal. They were 2 points up. They had a bit of momentum. Maybe it was the time to pull McKenna out a bit at that stage, especially when Donegal answered with the 2 or 3 points straight away, but they left him inside. And that's the only mistake. But in saying that, McKenna was very close yesterday, lads, to having 1-2 or 1-3. The fisted goal that he went for, like, he's millimetres away. Like, if that touches his knuckle, it's gone past padding. And then not only that, the toe poke after it nearly goes in. So, you know, if that goes in, Tyrone are winning by a point, lads. We're not sitting here talking about Mickey Hart. And so I will say that, and I will also back it up by, and it doesn't really apply to Mickey Hart because he's had such a long tenure in the job, but it still does. These managers this year have had an extremely difficult job. You're used to constant contact 3 or 4 times a week with your team to go away, to not being able to see them for months. It's extremely difficult what they're being asked to do. That added in with you get it. It's like getting a massive signing in Conor McKenna back in, and you don't have too much time to try and work on it, and you're kind of hoping, you know, it works out. So I'm not putting yesterday's loss on Mickey Hart, and I do believe Sean is possibly right, and maybe a new voice is needed, and maybe a new voice would just bring a bit of a spark and a new energy to the setup and a slightly different focus here and there. But as I say that, do I believe if Mickey Hart was here for the next 5 or 6 years with this Tyrone group, would he get an All-Ireland? I'd say very possibly he would manage to get one. So look, it's a tough one for the Tyrone County Board, but you know, maybe it's the players. The players, you know, would tell us more, and we're obviously we're never going to get that. The closest thing we can get that is to their former great coming out in the paper and saying it may be time to move on. Maybe he is a lot more. He probably has. He does have a huge insight and a lot more than I do into that setup. So, but that's my general thoughts on it.
It definitely seems that there is kind of like a bit of momentum on the Hart out bandwagon that's built up over the last few years, and it is not based on yesterday. Just on yesterday, Kieran, Donegal's midfield and I guess how other teams can target that area of the pitch is going to be an interesting talking point. Can you talk us through what Tyrone did to try and nullify Michael Murphy and that central area of the pitch?
I think Donegal did a very good job on starting Matty Donnelly out there and you know, trying to run off of Murphy and get Murphy going backwards and sideways. But McFadden was massive in the middle of the field yesterday. He really gave them a platform. He won breaks. He won dirty ball. He was in fellas' faces. I've played against him. He is mouthy, but you know, he's the kind of guy you just want next to you and you probably hate playing against. But he was really pushing that. Caelan McGonigal next to him, raw. I think it's a problem area Donegal may have is just who goes next to McFadden. Do you bite the bullet and just put Murphy out there? Because at this stage he really is playing like a midfielder and a kind of a quarterback more than a target guy on the 40. I think you put him out there with McFadden because I think you've loads of forwards. I think you're going to have to fit Paddy McBrearty back into the side. You're going to have to fit Oisin Gallen, and he was just so good yesterday. Jim telling me in the commentary box with Sky for the Cavan game that Oisin Gallen is absolutely roasting people in training and is probably the most on-form forward inside there, saying that he didn't start, which is maybe his impact was looked at because he was such an impact. He was so good in everything he did. He was back tracking back. He was back tackling. if you look at that build-up to that score, that put them the 2 points up in the 67th minute, they had 28 hand passes and 4 kick passes and held the ball for 2 minutes and 50 seconds. They were over, they were back. And if you look back in the score, watch Gallen's technique on that kick. He knows how important it is. He jinks inside his men, but look at the way he keeps his head down on the ball if you see that point back today, lads. As he kicks that ball, he's like a good golfer. The leg is gone, the ball is gone, his head is still looking at the ground. He really stood over it because it was into the breeze. It was a very tough kick, and that was a huge score for them. You have your, if you can get Murphy into the half-forward line, you're possibly looking at, up there with the best half-forward line in the country with Thompson yesterday. He's just so rangy, he's so smart, he's so accurate in the left leg, he can go past you. He's a good kick passer. You have Murphy at centre-forward, and then you've Langan, who is, unbelievable yesterday. The long-range points, the goal was just such a massive score. It was 5 points to Tyrone and 2 to Donegal, and they were really struggling, Donegal. Thompson put over the free to get them off the mark, and then this Langan goal came after his point, and he was a real injection. So you look at the forwards they have the forwards to compete right at the top level. Can you afford to get Murphy out with McFadden in the middle of the field? Is Jason McGee the answer? Is Caelan McGonigal the answer? I think he was good yesterday, but I think he had about 4 or 5, maybe even 6 turnovers. I could hear you. I don't know if you picked it up in the commentary, but you could hear the backroom team member that was right on the line on that side in Ballybuffet. He had a few choice bits of language at times for Caelan McGonigal running into traffic. I could hear him roaring, stay out of traffic. So he'll get a little slap in the wrists about that this morning, and rightly so. On a wet day, you do have to go to the contact, and then you're hoping that you're already seeing your next move ahead and that you slip the pass just as the contact comes to get you. But he constantly ran into contact yesterday. Jason McGee came on for him in the middle of the field, so he may be an option. But I don't know, do you just get Murphy out there? He is your spiritual leader. He is going to be on more ball out there. He'll get on easier ball out there in the middle of the field. It's easier I always feel it's easier to mark a centre forward out of it than it is mark a midfielder out of it. So he'll have loads of options, but they have, and their spine. Look, the only worry for me is where's Neil McGee this morning? What is his injury going forward? Donegal are a real serious contender, lads, but they need Neil McGee. You see, they put him on. Who did they put him on yesterday? Oh, they started him on McKenna. And I was kind of going, that was a big thing that we were talking about in the matchups. Would it be Brennan? Would it be Stephen McManaman? But it was McGee. And in fairness, he did well. I could see him at times watching it on the game. I could see the ball 20 yards past McKenna in his attacking half of the pitch, and McGee just banging him into the chest. It was a real tagger's job, as the Aussie rules, and that's what we said on Friday morning on this show, lads, is that they needed probably to tag McKenna if they were to have any hope of winning, and he did a great job for that first half on him. But he'll be a big loss, and if he is missing, Owen Bond was iffy enough yesterday. He was very good going forward, but he was a bit iffy defensively. He obviously had the mistake, which you have to give these guys chances, McGonigal included, with going into traffic. But you have to be smart enough to know the conditions as well, and know when's the right time to play a little ball. The hand pass from Patton or the kick pass from Patton across to Owen Bond wasn't the best. You probably had to hit him in the chest if you're looking to give Owen Bond a bailout on it. But Owen McHugh, their bench was brilliant. McHugh was brilliant. Gallen was brilliant, and they were full value for the victory yesterday. And in saying that, Tyrone could have very easily nipped that.
I've got to ask you about the general sense in the game, or in the build-up to the game against Cork at the weekend. How confident are people in Kerry that although this Cork side are improving, Kerry are still a good bit ahead of them?
Aaron, no matter what I say, Ger, won't be good enough for anybody anyway, because I was always a cautious fella. I always expected the best out of the opposition. I was always... I played with guys that were much more relaxed, and when we were playing someone that people expected us to beat, there would have been a few guys, would have been supremely confident in that we are the better team and we're just going to win. I was always on the fearful side of if they do this and if they do that. So I'm never going to. A leopard doesn't change his spots. Cork, like if you get conditions like you do yesterday, it doesn't overly help a kicking game. A good ball running team, a team that are good with ball in hand, it helps them. But look, you do expect Kerry to go down there, Ger, and put in a good performance and show why they're, could have won that first All-Ireland very easily last year. show why they're serious about winning this All-Ireland. Peter Keane has had them really well prepared the last few games. They look like they're in good fettle. You've an inside forward line that's really firing with Tony Brosnan and David Clifford. You have a Tommy Walsh that's in around there. You have a Paul Ganey that's coming back from a hamstring sting. You have Killian Spillane. You know, you have your option. Diarmuid O'Connor is doing really well in the middle of the field next to Dave Moore, and you have Jack Barry going for positions there. You obviously have Sean O'Shea at centre forward. Our back unit, our back six has been as settled as it possibly could be at this stage of the season. So, you know, he hasn't had much hardship so far. They're going to get a real test down here. I'm covering it for Off the Ball on Sunday and really looking forward to seeing what both teams bring.
And a quick word about Mayo. The benefits of having a game seemed to be borne out in the hurling in particular, that the championship is completely different from the league, notwithstanding the fact that it's a week after it. But actually, for Mayo to have that run out and to be a bit stuttery in the early stages, and for Killian O'Connor to go and shoot 110 or whatever it was, 112, that's them clearing their pipes ahead of the Roscommon game. But Roscommon are a serious team.
They are. Roscommon are serious, and they've shown that over the last few years. You know, Roscommon haven't come out of nowhere here. They're getting better. Conor Cox's arrival last year was big for them. He was sensational in a lot of games. He's a real focal point for them. But Mayo are for real in this championship, lads. I didn't jump off the bandwagon when they had a bad start against the Breeze and Castlebar against Tyrone last week, and people were jumping up and down about, oh, they're gone, here they go again. You know, they clawed that game back and very easily could have won that game in Castlebar after being 9 points down against an opposition like Tyrone, which is never easy to call it back against. Killian O'Connor back in, 7 debutants played, some of the older fellas coming back into the reckoning. Aidan O'Shea at full forward. They have a seriously good tackling full forward line with Killian O'Connor and Aidan O'Shea, and young Conroy again with a great goal and really looks the part at 15. So they've got what you need for winter football. If you're talking about a team tackling out of defence, we often say over the last number of years that there's nobody better than Mayo. You add that onto wet, slippy conditions and the contact that they get on you, they're going to be a nightmare to come out against you.
Yeah.
If they can
get over Roscommon, they should be like number 1 in the power rankings, is what I'm hearing you say here, Kieran. That's what I'm hearing.
If they get over, I'm not messing with Owen's power rankings. I'm not getting between ye lovebirds on that issue. But what I will say is, I do think it could be a year where Mayo find a bit of magic and a bit of momentum at the right time, and this thing will be over before we know it, lads. If we do get through it by December 19th, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if Mayo were sitting in a semi-final, getting ready for a game against Kerry, and letting Donegal possibly go toe to toe with the Dubs on the other side, and having one more crack at it and one more day in the sun for a lot of those fellas that are edging towards the end of their career. I never push people out the door, because people should be able to retire whenever they want to. But, you know, certainly when you start getting past the 32 and 33s, you start thinking, how long do I have left? Can I get an All-Ireland before I go? And I'm sure there's a certain few Mayo fellas that have signed up for this year on that basis, and they'll be happy with where they are right now, I would feel.
Yeah, look, I think it would be the most 2020 thing that happened all year.
You're right.
If Mayo were to win this. And a reminder, Jim McGuinness hipped him as well on Sky for Mayo.
He did. And he knows that, you know, that tackling forward pressure in these type of conditions is massive, and Mayo, along with probably Dublin, would be probably the best, and obviously Kerry trying to get there on that side of it with a tackling out from the front.
Kieran, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us.
Great stuff, boys. Good luck to you and good morning.
That's Kieran Donaghy. Next weekend's games: Cork against Kerry on Sunday, Limerick against Tip on Saturday. In Ulster, it's Cavan against Antrim, and Fermanagh against Down. In Leinster, Westmeath against the Dubs. That's on Saturday. Wicklow Meath is on Sunday. Offaly Kildare is Sunday, and Longford Laois is Sunday. And then in Connacht, it's Galway against Sligo on Saturday, and then Roscommon against Mayo on Sunday. So we do finally have the first weekend of the 2020 All-Ireland Senior Football Championship in the bag. SuperValu and OTB are calling on GA fans across the country to support where you're from. Are you the country's most devoted super fan? Well, we want to see the evidence. Send us your videos of you and your family supporting your county. There are some great prizes up for grabs. 20-second video, pre-match speech, pre-match setup at home, or better still, live match reactions as well. We want to see why your county team means so much to you. You can WhatsApp us on 0879 180 180. That's 0879 180 180. We'll choose a winner every Friday during the championship. Each weekly winner lands a €200 voucher for SuperValu near you, and also the chance to star in SuperValue's Superfan series, which is a fly-on-the-wall peek inside the homes of dedicated supporters around the country. Check out facebook.com/SuperValue Ireland for more. And I just want to tell you about a poll that we're running on the Off the Wall Twitter account. Should Johnny Sexton be replaced as Ireland captain? #OTBAM. You can say no, stick with him, or yes, mix it up. Owen, what do you think?
The Sexton question, it is a yes on the changing of the captaincy, and I think it probably needs to happen next year's Six Nations. I think for the rest of the season, it is going to be a situation where he gets to keep it. It just probably needs to be a point where Ireland needs to start thinking about the future and who's your captain going into the next World Cup cycle. And it's not a sense of stripping him. I was always of the opinion that maybe he should have gone onto the arm of James Ryan when it was up for debate at the start of the year. So it's more to do with that.
68% are saying mix it up right now. And we'll come to that a little later on in the pressure rankings as well. Time to get into the hurling. Tommy Walsh was on duty for OTB at the weekend. Aisling O'Reilly caught up with him after the Leinster doubleheader to get his thoughts. Have a look.
Kilkenny looked like an all-star team. They looked like they're after finding their mojo, finding a few new players, and we're going to run on to a comfortable victory. But it just didn't happen. So, listen, every match kind of takes a run of its own, and especially they're trying to get used to the new surroundings and that. So I think they will go back to the drawing board, say tomorrow or Monday maybe night back in Nolan Park or out in Dunmore, and they'll maybe change around one or two things. Kilkenny and Galway in the Leinster final in 2 weeks' time. Both of them, I think it'll go in as a 50-50 game again, and it might suit Kilkenny that they have to go back to the drawing board and ask a few questions of themselves.
And some positives was TJ Reid. He's an absolute wizard, as I heard you calling him. He's just something else, really.
He is, and I had the pleasure, I suppose, Aisling, of marking him in training. He's just an absolute magician. If you play him from the front, play him from behind, he's just going to win the ball. It's trying to, I suppose, shadow him and keep him from scoring too high a score on you. That's the main aim when you're marking TJ. An absolute wizard. Lives for the game, and just looking at him there, like he's 32, 33 there now. He's playing, and we all seen him with Ballyhale during the last couple of club campaigns as well. Like he's playing like a 27-year-old. Looks really fit, and I know he's involved in his own gym, so he's really treating his body right. I know, around 2013-14, he got a bad knee injury, and I think it was 12 he got the bad knee injury, so he spent a lot of time in the gym, 13-14, and slowly came around to that way of life. And I know he treats his diet really well as well, and it's really bearing fruit. So you have the hurling with the diet, with the lifestyle, we'll say, of a professional player, and he's just a joy to watch. I'd say he scored 1-3 or 1-4, I'd say, from play again today, along with all those frees. We're just lucky to be watching him.
Just speaking on that, the diet and everything else, say when you were playing, is that a big change? Maybe seeing the lads now, they're in the gym, they're doing the weights, or did you do all that back then?
Yeah, well...
Did you do it, Tommy?
I'm not that old. But I'll tell you a good one. 2005, I would have been 22. Now, we didn't win the All-Ireland. Maybe this is the reason. But I was working on the building sites. So it was during college, we'll say during the summer. And I had a fry every morning for the whole summer. We used to go down to Carrigan's, his name is the field now. We used to go down to Carrigan's every morning around 10 o'clock. Big fry, I think it was about €6, €7, and it was delightful. And trained that night, no problem at all. But maybe that's why we didn't win the All-Ireland.
We were talking during the game as well, just the way the tight fit jerseys, and you used to have the loose fit jerseys or whatever, and you're saying you wouldn't really see many county players now without six packs, and the pandemic definitely didn't seem to have too much of an effect on them. Maybe the time off did them well. Yeah, I think we definitely didn't have six packs either. I tried to get six packs in 2012, 8 years later I still don't have one, but but looking at it, there's no off season. There's no off season anymore. You're talking about the pandemic, so I think what happened there during the pandemic is they weren't allowed collectively train. So a lot of them, I'd say just, without having to go train that night, like say usually from maybe February, March on, you could be training 3 times a week. So you can't do a whole lot of gym because you have to get ready for the training session. Towards with no training for a couple of months, they were probably in the gym 4 or 5 nights a week. It's not just in the GAA, I suppose. Youngsters now are looking after themselves and, watching probably all the professional players to see what great shape they're in. And,
you're getting ready for the nightclubs and that as well. So it's more, I think the young generation are like that now. Plus then you have the inter-county, you have the access and, that elite mindset. So they bring it to another level again. So they're a credit to themselves, all the county teams. They've the tight fit jerseys and they're looking fit.
We'll move on then to the Wexford and Galway game. I definitely thought it might be a lot closer than it was. It was a bit of a surprise. Was it a surprise to you?
It was a surprise. I tipped Wexford before the game. I just thought with their players, they're coming into their peak years. Lee Chin, Conor MacDonald, Liam Ryan. I really thought they were. Just looking at it, trying to analyse it during the game and wondering, I think what happened was, so we all know they play a kind of a short game most of the time, Wexford with a sweeper. So it's basically soloing out maybe short passes or finding lads in space. I was looking at the Galway team, like they're all 6'5", and looking down at them there, they're all 6'5", 6'4". They're giants and they're as big, that way as well. They're big, strong fellas. And so the Wexford lads I found, they were soloing the ball but into trouble. Towards for the game that they were playing to work, they need to solo it, offload it to when say the opposition come towards you. You offload it to a guy in space, pop it over the bar. I think that's the main aim of that game, that you find the lad in space with a sharp pass and it's gone over the bar. The intensity of the defending by the Galway forwards didn't allow them to do that. So when Wexford got the ball, they tried to play their usual game, but they were just bringing it in and they were being dispossessed. The physicality of that Galway team. But in fairness, I think we all forgot how good this Galway team are. They had a bad year last year, but they're in the All-Ireland. They're champions in 17. They're in the All-Ireland in 2018, and could nearly have won it again in 2018. But so they are a good team, and they're after adding players.
I spoke to Davy Fitz there after the game and you could see it in him. He's absolutely just so upset by it all, but he apologised to the Wexford people, and then he also said that I don't mind losing, but when they don't fight is my problem, and they didn't fight out there today.
Yeah, and Aisling, that's the thing with them. Like a Davy Fitz team is a team that fights, a team that plays to the very end. You might go 9-10 points down, but they usually bring it back to a 4 or 5 point loss instead. But that victory for Galway was just getting bigger and bigger as the day went on. So he won't be happy. I've never heard him, in that kind of form after a game. Disappointed, but usually happy that his players gave it their all. Yeah. But today he wasn't.
And Galway, they have a lot of newcomers coming in?
Yeah, they do. And just looking down at the programme to see them all. Now, Fintan Burke, I thought was outstanding today. Nearly man of the match. Very sad scenes there at the end. Like, it looked like he has a shoulder injury, and if that's your AC joint or your collarbone, like, he'll be gone for the season, and he's after having injuries with his, I'd say it was his cruciate or some bad injury with his leg anyway the last couple of years. He was unbelievable today, and kind of a Daithí Burke is usually the man that inspires the Galway players and the Galway supporters, but he was in that kind of form today. Sean Loftus scored 2 points from corner back. Like, when would you see that? Shane Cooney, who, looking at him, I should know this, but I think he's a brother of Conor Cooney. He's the absolute stamp of him, and he was outstanding there again today, half back. And Brian Concannon, corner forward, scored. I'd say he scored a goal and a couple of points there today, but he was outstanding today. So they have that great team from 17-18, plus all these newcomers. So they will be a serious threat for the All-Ireland this year.
And looking ahead now to the Leinster final, will you be tipping Kilkenny, no doubt?
I don't think so. On that performance, like, Galway look, outstanding. So it'll be close. And it's probably too early to call it.
I think I heard you last weekend. You were talking to Owen Sheehan that you were saying you're tipping Limerick for this year. Was that right?
Yeah. Well, what I was saying was that my top 3 before the start of the championship would have been Limerick, Kilkenny, and Tipperary. They were my 3, but I'm going to put in Galway now into that as well. Usually my predictions they change from week to week, and the great thing about being a pundit, you can do that, but no, I definitely add Galway into that mix there now, because of the pandemic we just didn't know where anybody was at. So you're guessing a lot, but the form of them guys there now, they'll definitely be a serious threat to everybody.
And just on the structure then of the whole championship, so it's a knockout round, but you have a backdoor, so you'll have about 2 games every.
Yeah, so we were just about to get into the backdoor scenario there. Owen, I think we do now know exactly what the backdoor draw is going to be.
Yeah, Dublin against Cork and Laois against Clare is a draw made this morning. So Wexford and Tipperary get a bye. Those games are going to take place at neutral venues next weekend, with the following weekend seeing the winners playing Wexford and Tipperary. Also this morning, John Horan is saying that the All-Ireland semi-finals and finals could be pushed back again if a squad is hit by a COVID-19 outbreak. Otherwise, there'd be no postponement. So once we get to the last four, there could be room for manoeuvre on the calendar. And he's also said that the 2021 season will not start at the end of January, as many of us would have expected anyway. So that leaves a little bit more room to breathe. And then also the other thing he's been saying this morning is that the GAA still wants to finish the underage competitions. So obviously the under-20s, for example, at All-Ireland final level in football couldn't be finished because of level 5, but they still plan on getting it done. Okay, so there will be All-Ireland champions for this year at those age groups, and it looks like we're going to keep going until the semi-final stage. Up to that point, it'll be forfeiture, but once we hit semi-finals, they'll look at pushing fixtures back. So they've essentially given themselves the whole month of January to play with by saying that the new season won't start at the end of January, and we look forward to getting the details on that. One last question. Dublin against Cork in the hurling qualifiers, Laois against Clare. Will there be another draw next week when those two teams to see who plays Tipperary and Wexford? There will have to be, because I haven't seen who is waiting for who. Okay, all right. Ciarán Carey is with us to look back at the weekend's hurling. Ciarán, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm very good. And yourself?
Yeah, good. So everything that we thought we knew about Limerick came true. They are a dynamic team who are hurling to the peak of their powers at the moment. It was a stunning performance, just in the confidence of their ability to execute skills in the worst weather conditions that I've ever seen a match in. So, that's as good a performance, I would say, as we've seen since John Kiley's been manager. That's certainly my take on it. You've been watching this team very well over the last number of years. You've seen those lads, some of them grow since they were kids. What was your take on that game?
Yeah, I suppose mentally, my frame of mind before the game was, it was a terrible day, and the team that was going to adapt the quickest to the conditions obviously had a head start. But, to be fair to Limerick, I think they were possibly waiting for this game since the All-Ireland last year. I would have made a good few players up in Croke Park after the All-Ireland final, Limerick players, and, to say they were sick would be minimising it. So they were waiting for this one to come. And, it's very similar to the type of hurling, the type of power, the type of strength that they bought in 2018. And, they were just tying with Tipperary, and Tipperary, there was an awful lot of fear in their defence, an awful lot of errors. Okay, and you would put it down to the weather, but Limerick yesterday, they were at it from the start to the very end, and they're after sending out a huge signal to whatever teams are left after yesterday.
Ciarán, can you just explain to us just how hard a winter it was last year for Limerick? You mentioned how sick the fellas you met were on All-Ireland final day, and I can imagine the manner in which they lost to Kilkenny last year has given them so much hunger coming into 2020, and they've had to wait the extra few months for it as well.
Yeah, and I suppose there's a premise out there at the moment that Kilkenny were kind of all of a sudden getting a formula to put a stop to Limerick in that particular game, and without a doubt, no matter what style you're trying to implement, unless you back it up with work rate. And I suppose Tipperary traditionally will always come with that, but on that particular day, Limerick did underperform, number one. Kilkenny played a part in that, number two, but if they were at it that day and they were able to implement what they usually do, I think it would have been a different ball game. But they were very disappointed. They were after winning the Munster champions inside the Gaelic grounds against Tipperary. It was like seniors against juniors. You win that Munster championship, you're beaten in the semi-final, and the team then that you give a mother and a father of hiding to the Munster final, when you see them to go on to win the All-Ireland, it can be fairly demoralising, and as I said, Limerick are waiting for that for the last 12 months.
It's a great sign that this isn't a team that was a one-year flash in the pan, that this isn't, obviously Clare won in All-Ireland in 2013, but they never backed it up and they never fulfilled the potential of that team. This Limerick team seems, the character through the core of the team just seems to be a little bit different, and there's no sense that this is a team that's going away or going anywhere for the near future.
No, without a doubt, and I kind of made a prediction in early 2018 was Dublin towards inter-county football. Limerick are and will be the same in hurling, and it's going that particular way. And I think there's a lot of teams out there actually struggling still, even in the last 2 years, how to prevent Limerick or what kind of a system to put in place that might suit them. There's a lot of teams still struggling, and Limerick are 5 to 6 years perfecting and implementing the structure that they want to play. But not only that, they're tweaking it every so often as well, as we saw that yesterday in positional switches.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
Well, no, I was actually just going to pick up on those positional switches because they are the key noticeable thing tactically yesterday. So Cian Lynch at centre forward, Kyle Hayes at wing back. We've seen this before, but not in as big a game as this, Ciarán, I understand.
No, you wouldn't. But you see, there were two naturally switches, if you like, because Kyle Hayes would have always kind of grown up as a defender. Cian Lynch, if you like, with his club and Limerick, has played midfield for the last 4 to 5 years. So effectively, when he's centre forward, he's possibly a third midfield. So whatever number you get in your jersey, I suppose back in the old days you'd be a traditional centre forward, but that's not the case now. Limerick seem to flood the midfield, and whether the 5 bodies or 8 bodies, the bottom line is you get possession, you work it through the lines, and you get it in towards Ciarán Carey or Graham Mulcahy as quick as you can.
The performance of Gillette in particular, there was one piece of highlight where they were like, the ball gets put forward to him and it's Aaron Gillette versus this sea of defenders on his own, and because he's physically capable of withstanding that and has the skill set and has the brains and the bravery to be able to do that, then all of a sudden it means that you've got numerical advantages all over the rest of the pitch, because you can leave him up there and Tipperary feel like they do need to have 2 or 3 men on him.
Yeah, and they struggled actually tactically yesterday. Outside of the unforced errors and the mistakes they were making on the ball, I thought their shape was very poor. They were sucked into Limerick's play, and it suited Limerick, as you rightly pointed out, because the bottom line is that 9 times out of 10, and they had a good few rocks in the middle of the field. Limerick always came out with it. Next thing it's 1-2, 1-2, and all they're looking for then is a bit of grass and a bit of space directly in front. And it doesn't have to be a kind of a ball into the hand, just grass will do. And, if once Aaron Gillette sees the grass, he'll devour it up.
How much went actually into the physicality of these players in the off-season? Like, they've always been big, but it seems that they've gone to a whole new level this year, Ciarán.
Yeah, and we saw in 2018, the power, the strength, the pace and the skill Limerick have got back then, and as you rightly pointed out, I believe they've possibly gone to another level. Actually, even if you look at Cian Lynch physically, he's a lot more trimmer even this year than he was 2 years ago, if that can be possible. And to me it was possible. You could see it yesterday, evidently it was, and he looked sharper, a lot lighter on the feet, quicker to turn, and his vision and imagination is always there. But if you're going to add that extra onto him, you could see yesterday, he had a huge part in Limerick's win yesterday. But not only him, he's only won at 34, 35. And I suppose the mantra in Limerick really, you need to empty the tank, but not only empty the tank, you have to be prepared to empty the spare tank as well. And if you look at all the subs that come on yesterday, all physically strong men, but more important, all very, very quick players, and they are going to hurt you the last 10 or 15 minutes of most games.
It doesn't sound like this Limerick team are going to fear anybody, right? I totally understand that they're cresting to the peak of their powers. They're in a great scenario where they have the confidence of an All-Ireland victory behind them, but they also have the chippiness of an All-Ireland they feel they left behind. So they have a sense of mission and a bit of a revenge tour going on. Was there anything that you saw maybe from any of the other teams at the weekend, Kilkenny in the first half, or even Galway's dominance against Wexford, to make you think, okay, well, look, we understand we're the big dog here, but we're there to be shot at, and those 2 teams in particular will have something for us later on down the line?
Yeah, very good point. And I suppose if I was to be picking something at Limerick, and I watched the performance very closely against Clare, and to be fair, Clare kind of underperformed, but didn't put a glove on Limerick. And there was a bit of speculation leading into it was going to be full of rivalry, and that certainly wasn't there. But if I had to be critical of Limerick, in watching them the last 4 to 5 years, especially when you take into account the physicality and the power they have in the half-forward line, the skill they have in the inside line, Mulcahy, Gillette and Casey, Limerick should be a bit more ruthless, and they should be they have the ability to be hanging 3 to 4 goals per match. And, they'll send out a huge signal if they went down that road. But to be fair, they seem to be getting the points. But I think, 33, 34 points is outstanding. But if you could add another 3 goals for that, you're sending out a huge sign. Yeah, but to answer your question, Galway, I suppose, would be the team that I'd be looking at. Possibly Waterford could be dark horses. Cahill and Shane O'Neill are doing outstanding jobs with both counties, and did a huge win over the weekend. And you could see both managers what they're trying to implement with the team that they've got. There's obviously a process there, and they're trying to play to a certain system. So if I had to pick any teams that could be kind of a stumbling block to Limerick, possibly Galway.
Sorry, Ger. I'd just be keen to get your take on the other big Munster game over the course of the weekend, Ciarán, because we talk about 2018 quite a lot when it comes to this Limerick team, and it's almost like a sliding doors moment, that match against Cork, that incredible All-Ireland semi-final that a lot of Cork people feel they should have won, and they will tell you that they should have gone on to win the All-Ireland. And to look at their performance on Saturday compared to Limerick on Sunday, they're light years apart, really, aren't they?
They are, and from a neutral and from the outside looking in, I'm looking at Cork and I'm looking at their bench, which is strong enough. Potentially, they have what it takes to push up to Limerick and probably catch them on the day, but they don't seem to have a system that's actually working presently at the moment. Whereas they have plenty of skill, they have plenty of power. They just seem to be a small bit confused, but that might be a strong word, in how they're playing. But certainly from the outside looking in, and when I'm looking at Cork Hurling, I'm saying, there's a squad there that's capable of doing serious damage if they can just hurl to a system that suits them. Yeah,
it doesn't look like it's going to be this year. One last point, it sounds like from the way you're talking that for whatever the Limerick lads felt about Tip winning the All-Ireland last year, that the revenge tour won't be complete until they actually manage to get Kilkenny back.
Yeah, well, that's be on the back of their mind as well. But at the end of the day, they're in the Munster final now, and they're facing a new animal now in Waterford. And Limerick have given them Waterford a trim in the last 2 years, so Waterford has plenty of motivation to kind of bounce back to Limerick. But on top of that, they have an outstanding manager, and obviously he has them humming at the moment in Liam Cahill.
Kieran, that's brilliant today. Thanks a million for joining us. Great to have you on. Thanks a million.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Bye.
Limerick legend Ciarán Carey giving us some insight into the darkness and the dark soul of the Limerick winter that produced that performance the weekend, which was, like, when you think about it, like as we talked about the comedy rain at the start of the show, billowing across, like to be able in the midst of that to pick out quality passes and to play the way they did against a team who we just assumed were going to be like their main rivals for the All-Ireland this year. Stunning stuff, really. 3 minutes past 9 here this morning on OTB AM. Let me give you another opportunity to enter our competition here. It's a mystery voice competition. We're going to play you a clip. You're going to tell us who it is. You're going to text us to 0879 180 180. And up for grabs, we have a brilliant prize. It's the brand new Irish football jersey, the first time without a sponsor in 30 years. All you got to do is identify this man. He's having a bit of trouble remembering the finer details of that shootout in Genoa in 1990.
When their guy come up, I think his name was Timofte. Timofte, his name was, who took the penalty.
It's all thanks to Umbro, official kit sponsor to the FAI. If you don't win this morning, you can get your sponsorless Ireland football jersey over at faishop.com now. So, yeah, I think you should know who that is. An ex-Republic of Ireland captain, played for Chelsea, played for Villa, played for Norwich. 0879 180 180, and we'll put you in the draw, but you got to enter in the next half an hour or so, or else you won't be in with a chance to win today. So let me tell you what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio across the day. Brilliant lineup for you between now and 7 o'clock this evening. Declan Murphy is a jockey who nearly died as a result of a brain injury that he received. Has written one of the best sports books I've read ever. It's called Centaur, and that's from 1 o'clock today. Giles Week this week for his 80th birthday. Liverpool all-time 11 from 3 o'clock. Our Culture Hall of Fame from 4 o'clock today. And then today at 6, Dr. Harry Edwards talking about O.J. Simpson. That is a brilliant 40 minutes in the company of a really stunning speaker and somebody who's had a box seat in the history of sport and sociology of sport and that intersection of race and culture in America. So that's tonight at 6 o'clock. The only place you can get those is on OTB Sports Radio, and the best place to get that is on the OTB Sports app. We're going to take a quick break. We're back with the pressure ranking. There's a lot of people under a lot of pressure. Stay tuned.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
We all talk about what might happen and our hopes and dreams for the day, but that's not real life.
Dadcast Tuesdays from 3 p.m. on OTB Sports Radio. Tune in on the OTB Sports app. OTB Sports, in partnership with Cadbury FC, have kicked off a brand new series of in-depth chats with some of the biggest names in football.
I mean, I've got to win. I can't lose. If I lose, I'm going to be devastated.
The fourth episode sees Harry Redknapp and Glenn Hoddle sit down for a feature-length conversation. So stay tuned to OTB social channels and OTB Sports Radio. Check out CadburyFC.com for updates on promotions and giveaways.
For me, it was a self-imposed pressure.
Was I under pressure? No.
Yeah, they're under pressure. Everyone's under pressure.
OTB AM's Pressure Rankings with Gillette.
And the big pressure.
Well, that was a fairly stacked weekend, and with a fairly stacked weekend of sport, you tend to have this mishmash of pressure piling upon pretty much everybody. As you can see, we've got a 5-to-1 list on the sidebar, and we're going to start at number 5 here, Ger, with Mickey Harte. We've kind of gone into this with Kieran earlier on. I like just that point I just want to expand on here around Mickey Harte. Is the clamour for Mickey Harte's head today based on yesterday? That's no. the question. It's not really, is it? No. And I don't think you can watch that game in isolation yesterday and say the manager of that losing team deserves to lose his job. And I wonder if you can actually make a case here that what he's done over the last few years, made a semi-final last year, All-Ireland final the year before, got his best team, hopefully, available to him next year. Do you actually make it the one last hurrah? Do you actually say that before the year, that this is one last year we've signed a one-year contract and we're going to take this up till the end of 2021 and make everybody happy here? Because like part of me does empathise with the view that Mickey Harte shouldn't be pushed out the door at this point.
Like, okay, so if a new manager had come in and reached an All-Ireland semi-final, an All-Ireland final, semi-final, and then had this defeat 3 years ago, what would you be saying? So, like, Mickey Harte's career is its totality, and at the start, that team was absolutely sensational. And as Kieran said, won 3 All-Irelands in a county where you had won none before. It does appear as if there are plenty of other candidates now, and so it's going to be interesting to see what the county board decide, if they want to keep Mickey Harte for one more year or if they actually do want a fresh voice. Sean Kavanagh is the highest profile person who has come out and said that it is time for him to move on. There are plenty of columnists in the paper saying it's time for him to move on, and it's easy for the columnists. Sean Kavanagh has to live and work in Tyrone and decide that he's going to put his head above the parapet. So if nobody else comes out, I think Mickey Harte's going to be fine. But if somebody else from that era comes out and says, yeah, I mean, sorry, I think Owen Mulligan might have in the past said that it was time for him to move on as well. So we'll see over the next few days as they all decide, right, is now the time to say Mickey's been a brilliant servant, what an incredible career he's had, but let's go with something new. And it's such a young team that it might be the right thing for a new manager to come in, because say he gives it one more year and they win, then you got another decade of Mickey Harte, right? Or if he doesn't win, have you blown that 1 year where everybody was... That was actually your year's opportunity to get in, get people new. Next year is going to be a fairly different championship as well. We don't know what the structure of it's going to be. We don't know if it's going to be a league next year. Like, yeah. I don't know. I think he's had an amazing career and he's had his opportunity, and at some point you've got to admit that my time is up. That's just life. Everybody has a shelf life, that's for sure. It's just going to be a very difficult thing for anybody to step away, given the fact that you will feel that you were shortchanged this year, that you were hoping for the full year and you got one game, and it was an Ulster Championship game against one of the best teams in the land, and you lost it by an hour margin. It is unfortunate. I just cannot see a world where Mickey Harte is volunteering his resignation anytime soon. And
there might have to be a few more voices coming out and saying it. And like there are a couple of candidates. You'd be looking at someone like Peter Canavan potentially as someone who'd be near the top of the list to actually take the job or to come up over the next little while. And what a new voice that might be. So it's going to be interesting. But I think that if you're waking up this morning thinking that Mickey Harte is living on borrowed time, I'm not sure it's a done deal that he is going to walk away or that he will be removed in this off season. At number 4. We have Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. The silence around Solskjaer, I guess, on Super Sunday does become a little bit deafening at times, and to the point where it actually gets addressed head on yesterday by Roy Keane, diminishing the role of the manager essentially in what he was saying, that the motivation of players and their lack thereof can't be blamed on the manager. And I'm not sure if that's the right thing to say or not, but there is this constant Sunday evening discourse, whether it's Neville, whether it's Keane, whether it's both of them, either skirting around Solskjaer or defending him. And what you have then is social media filling the void, and hashtag #AllAOut was trending on Twitter last night, for example, where there is a movement beginning where Manchester United fans don't want Solskjaer to be their manager anymore. And you've got Mauricio Pochettino, who is going to be on the same channel tonight, who I would assume is not doing media in Britain unless he was semi-interested in a job in Britain. And I don't think he'd be interested in a job with a lower profile, much lower than Manchester United anyway. Just to put yesterday into context, United are without a win at home in the last 6 Premier League games that they've played. It is their longest winless run at Old Trafford in 30 years. And then almost worse than that is the fact that they've allowed Arsenal to break their own winless streak against the top 6. For the first time since January 2015, Arsenal have won away to a Big 6 club. So I'm not sure which of those statistics is actually worse because, lads, it's Arsenal.
Yeah, lads, it's Arsenal. We'll come back to this in a couple of minutes' time. David Meyler standing by, so we're going to get his thoughts on it. If you've got thoughts on it and you're a Man United fan or an Arsenal fan, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. What's next?
Very briefly then, Andy Farrell is at number 3. It does sort of feel that a lot of the fixes can be made or should be made via the coaching team at this point. Are we getting to a stage where we're believing or thinking that the Ireland playing group perhaps just aren't as good as France or England's? If we get to that point, then the fixes will need to be made via the coaching, not via bringing in new names, like the discourse around Jacob Stockdale, for example. Can you actually make a case that Jacob Stockdale isn't starting in an Ireland team or at least figuring for Ireland consistently? You probably can't. So I think that a lot of the attention is going to shift towards the coaching staff. Whether that's fair or not is probably a discussion for another day. So there's definitely pressure on Andy Farrell. There's definitely pressure at number 2 on Johnny Sexton, 35 years of age at this point. Does the captaincy stay with him? I think our poll this morning is saying no. Am I right in saying that? That it shouldn't stay with Sexton. But I think the likelihood is that it will stay with Sexton, whether you think that's right or wrong. And obviously there's a Nations Cup campaign to be played out. It is a good opportunity for players to play themselves back into a bit of form. And you just wonder if the start of next year's Six Nations could be a bit of a new beginning. Meanwhile, a new beginning is probably going to be wanted by everybody in Wexford after their performance on Saturday night. Davy Fitzgerald is in at number 1 in our pressure rankings because he used the C word, the word character. Once Davy Fitz throws that out, you know you're under a lot of pressure. We showed no guts, no fight, and no character. It's extremely disappointing.
Let's have a listen.
Fair play to Galway, he said. We're miles ahead of us.
We have 45 seconds of it here. Have a listen.
I'm not really worried what the result is the next day. What I'll be worried about, will we come out and will we fight? That's the name of the game. I'm involved in hurling to compete. I'm not involved in hurling to just go out there and put up the white flag and hang Galway a game like we did tonight. It's absolutely horrendous, and I'm not happy with it.
That was it. They just looked like the hungrier team. They were out in front. They were tough. They tackled hard. That was the difference in the end.
Yeah, they wanted it more. Simple as that. I'm just disappointed. I believe in the battle. That's all I've ever believed in, and that didn't happen tonight.
Ooh, that's hard. That's this week's pressure rankings. Davy Fitz is at number 1. Is there anything else you want to say about that?
No, that is it, number 1. And will they be back? I'm not so sure because there was a lot of pressure around Davy Fitz actually coming back this year.
OTB AM's pressure rankings with Gillette.
Right. David Meyler, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning.
Have you seen the new Ireland jersey yet?
I have, yeah.
Do you like it?
I do. I think it's smart. It's not like flash. I do like it. I need to pick it up for my kids. Yeah.
I like the away jersey. Well, you can enter our competition this morning. Our mystery voice. Last opportunity for people to enter it. Who's this?
When their guy come up, I think his name was Tim Offday. Tim Offday, his name was, who took the penalty.
087 918 180 is the number. You know who that is, right?
Well, it's Andy Townsend. The more entries, the better, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, man. You're just about the right age to have had Andy Townsend as an idol, right?
Are
you too young?
Really...
No. Jesus.
Yeah, I am. You think Andy played what, USA 94 and that, and then kind of played mid to late 90s with Villa and that. I was young. You look at me, like I speak more about Stephen Gerrard, Roy Keane, so Andy would have been a bit older, but obviously I know who he was, how he played. Fantastic player. But I think we've given the answer to everyone, haven't we?
We have. I'm disappointed that you're that young, Jesus. But I think he's underrated as great Irish midfielders go. But look, we don't have time to get into that today. Let's get into Manchester United and the scenario that they find themselves in. Midweek, we had our regular Manchester United people on, and they were as happy as they've ever been because their midweek record is absolutely sensational. I think they've won 16 out of their last 17 midweek games. Their European record is excellent. Their performances were good. The squad looked to have depth. They have one of the best young attacking players in the world. And today, 4 days on, we're talking about the manager potentially getting sacked because Pochettino's in the Sky Studios tonight. This is a wild situation that Manchester United find themselves in at the moment.
No, definitely. I actually watched the game midweek against Leipzig, and I think anyone with an open mind would have realised the result wasn't right. Like, it was almost like, Leipzig made subs. I think they brought in the young boy Sabitzer, and they just kind of fell apart, and United just went boom, bosh, bang, like, adding the third, fourth and fifth and whatever, and it just kind of took off. I don't think the performance was very good, but it wasn't, the scoreline didn't suggest it was a dominant performance of the way it was. But then, like, the big tough thing is, he switches to the diamond, he kind of squeezes them all in during the week, and then it's like, what do we do when we play Arsenal? And then they think, well, we're at home, we should be on the front foot. And then it was just the complete opposite. It was just a lackluster performance. I think there was just no spark, no energy. Obviously, there's been a lot of stuff highlighted about the players, not motivating themselves or whatever. But it was just a very, very bad day at the office. And look, managers are, judged on results. And Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is going to be under savage pressure. I just heard Owen speaking there a second ago, talking about Pochettino's on the telly tonight. I can't remember the last time I saw Pochettino, and usually a manager, or if he's not employed at the time, does appear on telly somewhere kind of to say, look, I'm available. I've had my little, gardening leave. I've had my holiday. I've spent time with the family. I want back in now. So maybe he's putting his name forward to say, look, I'm available and I'm out there if you want to come and get me.
It seems that way, and all he has to do is answer a few questions about team shape and his own experience, and all of a sudden people will be comparing, contrasting, and maybe it's not fair, but at the same time, right, Manchester United are in this cycle of manager comes in, makes some changes, does okay for a while, things fall apart a little bit. New manager comes in, does okay, makes some changes, signs some players, and then it's just this constant, perpetual change. I get that if Solskjaer's the wrong guy, then you have to make the change. But do they know if Solskjaer's the wrong guy just yet?
I think probably the biggest problem Manchester United have is, you look at the previous managers before Solskjaer with the Mourinho, Van Gaal, two big, characters in the game of football. I'd say they wanted things their own way. I think there's probably a level of control with Solskjaer from higher up inside. Now, I don't know this firsthand, but you kind of get this idea that, Solskjaer's been through the system, obviously spending so long of his career there with Sir Alex, and then now he's at the point where, he's not getting the players he wanted to sign originally. You look at there has to be massive question marks raised over Donny van de Beek, spending 40 million and he's not playing regular football. I know we did touch on that last week about Pogba and whatever, but he wanted Sancho, it doesn't happen. There was talks that he wanted Grealish, it doesn't happen. And then it's almost as if somebody in the board or someone higher up is kind of said, well, hold on a minute, you're lucky to be in this job. Whereas I think with Mourinho and Van Gaal and those fellas were a bit like, well, no, I want these players. These are the players we're going after, kind of thing. It's just so difficult. And now Pochettino is going to be, his name is going to be touted everywhere. Even like, as you said, midweek, you have a huge win in the Champions League. Everything is great. We're turning the corner. And then you go and you lose to Arsenal, who haven't beaten Manchester United in 14 years, as Owen touched on as well. You know, it's the first time Arsenal have won away at a top, inverted commas, top 6 side in the last, 5 years. It's kind of like Arsenal yesterday, the big thing about the game yesterday was Arsenal had a game plan and they stuck to it and they executed it. Every player kind of knew their role. Manchester United just looked like they didn't know what to do. They had no plan B. They kept trying to play out from the back. All great, keeping the ball. But then, you've got Fred, McTominay dropping down by the centre-halves. And it's kind of like they haven't even broken the first line of the press that, you're going nowhere. And they just turned over possession so many times. And, it's frustrating for me as a football fan to watch because they do have some very, very good players. And there's cases that call a few of them world class or up in that bracket of maybe not the best in their position, but certainly in the top 5, 6, 7, and they just look out of sorts, and inevitably that's going to fall back at the manager's door, and that's the sad reality of it because the manager counts on the players. You can talk about tactics and whatever, but once the game starts or that first whistle is blown, the players have got to perform, and at the moment, Man United are too hot and cold. They're too inconsistent.
Do you put any weight in the tactics then yesterday? Like, when should you play at Diamond? And was yesterday the game to play that in?
Look, the Diamond had worked for them, so you can't knock that. If it's not broke, don't fix it. It had worked during the week against a good side who just capitulated in the second half. But I get the point of them playing the same formation. But if you go back 2 weeks ago when they played Paris Saint-Germain, Ollie played whatever way you want to, dress it up, the 3 at the back, the 5 at the back with the wing backs where Tellez and Wan-Bissaka played and whatever, and they were fantastic. And then on the hour mark, when PSG were starting to get a bit of foothold in the game, like he switches, he brings Pogba on, and then I was one of the first ones to applaud him. People said Pogba changed the game, but I think it was the tactical change, and he got that one spot on. But then yesterday there was no change in the kind of we need to do something different. You look at the first substitutions, he changes Matic for McTominay, Fred and all them. He's changing whole midfielder. There was no kind of why not go to 3 at the back and try and pile more fellas forward or something. It was just, you've got to hold your hands up when you get it wrong, and the tactics were wrong yesterday, but also at the same time, the players didn't perform. They turned over possession too much. Obviously, the majority of us would have watched it on Sky. You see Jamie Redknapp highlighting. You think if you go to Old Trafford and you have, a minute 50 is what he quoted on the ball where you're knocking it around and you're able to sustain attack after attack against Manchester United. That's unheard of. If you go back over the years of the teams they had, even going back to 2-3 years ago, that didn't happen. And that's probably the worry for me, is that there was a lack of intensity in them. There was no. I know the Manchester United and Arsenal games aren't the same of the old ones where we watched Keane and Vieira going toe to toe, but there was just nothing. You look at Thomas Partey yesterday coming in, and he had a field day. I think if any young midfielder wants to learn a game, watch how he played, the positions he took up. He looked like he never got out of third gear. He was just comfortable, breaking up play, getting on the ball, dictating the pace of it. And that was the worrying thing, to go for a midfielder to go to the Premier League, or go to Old Trafford, in the Premier League, and to be able to dictate a game. That was the worrying thing. But Manchester United today are gonna, they're gonna sit down. They'll probably watch the game back 2-3 times, and they're gonna, analyse it, and they've got to, solve these problems.
Can I ask you about that Arsenal performance then? Because you mentioned Thomas Partey, who obviously is going to get picked out for an unbelievable performance. Where is that dial at for Mikel Arteta at the moment, where he can start pushing it towards being a little bit more offensive? Because it's going to be a full month in the Premier League now without scoring from open play.
No, of course. Look, Arsenal haven't been fantastic this season. They've lost games, but I think they're starting. I think the big thing for Manchester United fans and Arsenal fans, it looks like Arsenal have a direction in which they want to go in. You know, we can obviously highlight Thomas Partey. He was excellent yesterday. Like I said, everything he did was, you can see why he played at Atletico Madrid and why Diego Simeone loved him. I think Simeone came out after and said he didn't want to lose him, but there was a clause, and once the clause is met, it's kind of out of the club's hands. It's really down to the player. But like everything from Arsenal yesterday, you look at Gabriel centre half, he was fantastic. Kieran Tierney looks like, a bargain for 25 million. And then of course, the big thing, like you've still got Lacazette, Aubameyang. They've got good players. Of course, look, they want to be scoring more goals in open play, but they seem to have a direction in which they want to go in, and the way they set up, their tactics were spot on. Manchester United couldn't get on the ball, dictate the play. They just kept forcing them into errors and turning over possession. But Arsenal will be looking to improve going forward because Aubameyang is a top-class striker and he'll expect to score more goals and he won't want to be scoring penalties every week.
Liverpool on Saturday night was a very interesting case study in what could have been for Liverpool. I mean, Nat Phillips and Xherdan Shaqiri, two of the stars of the show, two players who could easily be playing football with different clubs right now. Nat Phillips, how impressed were you with his performance? I think he got man of the match in the end.
He did. He was exceptional. I think the way they probably dressed up was they probably expected Mikel Antonio, and they thought we need someone who's going to be, Liverpool were thinking we need someone who's going to be strong, physical in the air, who's going to be able to battle with Antonio. I touched on it with you with Henderson playing centre half that I wasn't a fan of it because I felt that Antonio. Now I know he didn't play in the end, but he would have bullied him in the way that they were going. Like Thomas Haller is still Sebastian Haller, is another big strong fella that is going to knock. And I think he dealt with it, and everything that came his way, he dealt with. Look, when you're playing at Anfield, you're going to have the lion's share of possession, and everything he did right. And you saw in his post-match interview where he said, it was kind of for me to get up to speed, but do it simple. He won his headers, he kept it, knocked it wide, just defended well. And I think it was a good all-round performance. But the adrenaline of that game, of being like, his Premier League debut, I know it was his second appearance, but it would have been massive. And, it just shows you that Liverpool can rely on other players, but at the same time, it wasn't a glorious performance. It wasn't fantastic, but the big thing is you touched on there, Shaqiri. Like Shaqiri looked like his Liverpool career was more or less over. If you look at the back end of last season, he was kind of getting 5 and 10 minutes here. Now, in the last few games, he's really made an impact. Even when he's come on, he's kind of, you always look for substitutes to come on and impact the game or change the game. Can you do something, And you look at Shaqiri coming on, getting the assist for Jota's goal. I know Jota also had one for, ruled out. And it is massive because now Liverpool to me look like, certainly like, say, a team of champions where they're winning even though they're not playing the free-flowing, football that we're used to from the front three or whatever. It's not firing all cylinders for them, but they're finding ways to win, which is the most important thing. Because at the end of the day, if you look back at last year when Liverpool won the Premier League, if you asked me Liverpool's opening 6 fixtures, you wouldn't remember, those games at Christmas when they had to battle it out, on your Saturday. People don't remember them. It's just they remember that Liverpool won the Premier League, and it certainly feels to me like they're finding ways to win.
Yeah, it's kind of mad, isn't it? That it's such a credit to Klopp, I think, in this regard, that he basically came out. I know he said with Phillips publicly, I'd be happy enough for him to leave, and he could be playing with Bolton now, for example. Yeah. And he basically was the same with Shaqiri. The message was loud and clear that you are not in the immediate plans of this club. And they still put in a performance like that. That ability to bring a player back into the fold and put the trust in the player and the trust the player feels back. Again, you can't say enough good things about Klopp in recent years, but he does deserve credit for that, you feel?
No, 100%. Like with Shaqiri and him coming out, it's kind of like, look, Ginger Carey will want to play week in, week out. He'll feel he's good enough. He'll feel he's good enough to play week in, week out for Liverpool. That's the type of character. That's why you're in the game, to play week in, week out. He doesn't want to be sitting on the bench. And he's probably had, conversations with Klopp behind closed doors where he said, I want to play more. And he said, look, I can't guarantee you the minutes. I'm happy for you, to look elsewhere if you want. And Shaqiri's probably turned and gone, do you know what? I want to stay. I want to fight for my place. It's Liverpool have that good environment. Obviously they've had, which comes from the success they've had with winning the Premier League and the Champions League, where these fellas have, got a taste of it and they don't want to lose it. And you look at fellas like Shaqiri, they want to stay there and they want to battle. And then the biggest thing is when you get opportunities, whether they be 5, 10, 15 minutes, you've got to make an impact. And that's the big thing. Shaqiri is, Jota is. Like, there's Liverpool's front three have been untouched for, the last 3-4 seasons. Yeah. But now Jota, there's question marks now. Can Jota start? Do we accommodate and put Mane or Salah through the middle and, swap and change and then fit Jota in to drop Firmino? Liverpool have never had that problem because it has always been that front three. But now, I suppose if every Liverpool fan loves watching Firmino play, he's fantastic at what he does. Like, in my opinion, he's one of the best in the world at what he does. But at the same time, I have to be realistic. He's not scoring enough goals. Like, for a striker that's playing in a team that's winning, he needs to be scoring double digits every season, and he's not getting enough goals.
Do you think then that that front three is under real threat from Jota? Like, is the lack of goals not made up with everything else he does?
I think if you want to be, champions year after year, if you want to be winning trophy after trophy, you need your front three firing at all cylinders. I even look at, the midfielders. Probably Fabinho is the only one that would get out of it, but certainly your Wijnaldum, Henderson, Thiago, those ones who might play a little bit more advanced. Yes, of course, Thiago does like to play a little bit deeper at times, but if Fabinho and Thiago play, you'd be expecting them to get at least 5 goals a season. And I'd be certainly looking that someone like a Wijnaldum who's, scores big goals in big games, but he should be aiming for, double digits nearly. If you look at a team like Liverpool who create so much. So then the question goes back to, I wouldn't say Mane and Salah are under threat. I think I don't even want to say it because the one I love the most is Firmino, and I know that the work he does is so underrated that people don't appreciate it. It's not like people are quick to compare him to, say, Harry Kane or whatever, that you look at the goals Harry Kane scores, whether they be penalties or not. Harry Kane is still chalking out 20 goals a season. But it's a new one for Jurgen that he has someone who really is with Jota. He's really knocking on the door to say, like, he's putting his hand up because, look, the games he's played, whether he's started or come off the bench, he's really made a difference, and it does look like a fantastic signing.
Is he a centre forward? Is he the same type of player? Is he a 9?
No, I don't think he's a 9, but I do think like he can play left side or right side. So then they're going to swap. They're going to put Salah through the middle or Mane through the middle and work that way. We saw that in the Champions League when he came on. Mane went through the middle. So it's. I don't think inevitably it will be Jota for Firmino, but it won't be. It will be a change in the sense that it will be, Mane will have to move into the middle or Salah will have to move into the middle.
We might just finish up on Chelsea here, David, just because a very interesting tactical shift on Saturday. They moved to a 4-3-3, Mount, Kante and Havertz, the midfield three, but Hakim Ziyech up front just looked unreal. You had Tammy Abraham dropping deep as more of a withdrawn number 9, with Werner and Ziyech in more advanced roles. Ziyech gets the headlines. What did you make of his performance, and how sustainable is this? Because he is the one that people have been saying in recent weeks, wait for him to get into the team and then Chelsea will really start rolling.
No, look, I'm not going to sit here and say I've watched him 100 times. I watched him enough with Ajax in the Champions League that he is a special player. It's his ability to drift, in between the midfield and defence, kind of, coming deep, getting the ball. He can create. That's the thing. He can see a pass. He certainly can dribble. And of course, look, you saw from the game against Burnley, He can score. I think the big thing at that performance was, like obviously you said there, Frank switched to 4-3-3, but it's actually playing N'Golo Kante as the deep line playmaker. He inevitably got rid of Jorginho, dropped him, and then Havertz and Mount, like they just looked better. Mount certainly, looked more dynamic. If you look, there was many things, highlighted of him in his performance, getting on the ball, dictating play, spreading it. I just think if you have a player like N'Golo Kante, like I'm not the manager of Chelsea, I don't see him day in, day out, but I can't see him being a problem, but he looks to me like the one that you just have to play him there, because he's been lauded by, current players, ex-players, managers as the best holding midfielder in the world. And when he plays there, he just gives Chelsea such a good balance at, turning over possession, winning the ball back, keeping it simple, which then, like you said, you can get the ball forward to your Ziyech's and those type of players where they can go and create and make something happen. And, Ziyech was excellent. He has 2 goals in his last 2 games. Obviously, he struggled with, I think it was a knee injury, but I wouldn't even say Ziyech is up to full speed yet. I think it'll be another 2-3 games for him playing in the Premier League to finally, get a good understanding of it. And I think he'll be an exceptional signing for Chelsea.
Yeah, it's a pretty scary prospect for the rest of the league. David, great to have you with us this morning. Thanks a million.
Cheers, guys.
It's David Motter giving us some thoughts there this Monday morning. Hope you've enjoyed the show so far. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. A reminder that OTB Sports, in partnership with Cadbury FC, have kicked off a brand new series of in-depth chats with some of the biggest names in football. You might have heard some of these already. They've been absolutely sensational. You can get them on the OTB Podcast Network, or maybe you got them on our YouTube channel. The next one is, there they are, it is Harry Redknapp and Glenn Hoddle. That's coming this week. We've already had Ian Wright and Saul Campbell, Teddy Sheringham and Gary Neville, Shay Given and Packy Bonner. So the 4th episode is going live this week. Check out cadburyfc.com for updates on promotions and giveaways, and stay tuned to all of our social channels for that. A couple of quick comments from earlier on. Ger Eoin on YouTube was saying, Donaghy has such great insight into the modern game, has so much respect in the game, he should be a part of Peter Keane's staff. If he was a part of Peter Keane's staff, Ger, then he wouldn't be able to come on and give us his insight. So I've no doubt that at some point Kieran will be involved with the Kerry setup, but the longer that delays, the better for all of us, for the ability at least to pick his brains. And then again, the same person also talking about, I wouldn't be a fan of Mickey Hart, but for what he has done for Tyrone football, he has earned the right to decide when he wants to go himself. Kavanagh just loves to be controversial. Imagine a pundit who actually says what he thinks. It's great, we like it. And Thomas Kane on YouTube says, oh, Mickey, please stay. I'm not sure if he's a Tyrone fan or not. On the Sexton poll, stick with him were the comments coming through. That wasn't how the vote ended up. 65 said that 65% of our listeners this morning were thinking that the time has come for a new captain. And Michael O'Brien says, this is as usual a massive overreaction. Arsenal players didn't play midweek. Manchester United need Martial to link up the attack. The diamond didn't work without him. So lots of comments rolling in and lots of debate happening in the comments on our YouTube channel. You can get them there, or of course you can talk to us at any point by WhatsApp on 087 9 180 180. That was the number to enter our mystery voice competition. I'm going to tell you who the winner is. Who's this?
When their guy come up, I think his name was Tim Offday. Tim Offday, his name was.
Did you know that, Owen, before David Meyler told you?
I did, thankfully.
Straight away. Well, it was Andy Townsend. Congratulations to Kevin Kane and Tony McMahon in Sligo, with thanks to Umbro, official kit sponsor to the FAI. The 2 lads are picking up new Ireland football jerseys, the one that we unveiled on the show last week. If you don't win this morning, don't worry, you can still get your sponsorless Ireland football jersey over at faishop.com now, and we'll be giving ones away each week, but you've got to be tuned in over the course of the show. We're going to bring you this. It's Fiona Steed and James Downey dissecting Ireland's defeat to France at the weekend. Enjoy.
Time for us now to look back on the events at the Stade de France last night. Ireland going into the game with a chance of winning the championship for the 4th time in 7 seasons. They were going to need either a bonus point victory or, as it transpired, with Italy keeping the score down against England, a 6-point differential over France with the try would have been enough to win the championship. But all that spoiled by France, Le Bleu winning by 35 points to 27, not the 30-point differential that France needed to put on Ireland to be crowned champions, and that means that England are champions for the 3rd time in 5 years. Not a bad time for English rugby. It's a men's and women's double in the Six Nations, and their clubs have also won the Champions Cup and Challenge Cup this year. So that is England, who are described in some of the newspapers of not having improved since the World Cup, but I think we would have taken that kind of year for Irish rugby. We've got James Downey and Fiona Steed with us. Folks, good afternoon to you.
Hi, how are you?
James, I'll throw to you first on this one, because Ireland, at least up until the closing stages of the first half, until Jacob Stockdale's error allowed France in for a try, it seemed the game plan at that point of trying to kind of measure themselves in terms of chasing points, but also not doing anything stupid defensively, seemed to be working quite well. But they were really hit by the concession of that try.
Yeah, I think so. And I think just before the game, you go into that and it's only going to be 6 points and a try to score a try, rather than that mammoth task of getting 4 tries. And I think the game plan initially in that first 40 certainly was going to plan. You saw the attitude in terms of the scrum, the set piece, I thought was huge, and the penalty at the start. And it shows the intent from the team. We got a penalty. Conor Murray has a shot at goal. Doesn't go over, but that shows that we're just here. We need to win this game and grind out this game and get the win, And there's a reason why we've only won there a couple of times, and like 2 years ago we won there, obviously, but we haven't won there 2 in a bounce. And I think it's so frustrating then to see just 1 or 2 errors, and especially in that first half, and just let them back into the game. And look, the second half is a completely different one, I think, in terms of the amount of errors you made, and it's so frustrating to finish the Six Nations like that. But there were some good bits in that first half, but it is just frustrating, especially going forward, and how we just let it slip so much.
Yeah, 1928-29 is the last time that Ireland beat France in back-to-back games away from home. So that hasn't happened for them in quite some time now. But Fiona, when it comes to those individual mistakes, are they down to the system, or is it just down to individuals making mistakes in a high-stakes game?
Look, I think it's a combination. There was an awful lot of unforced errors yesterday, or forced by the French and their aggressive defence. But then there was individual errors. Obviously Stockdale has been picked out a couple of times, and that bobbling ball in front of you really need to be able to deal with that as a full back. But some of the passing was poor. There was a lot of bad passing. There was a lot of inaccurate passing. Now it was raining, but it was raining for the French as well. And I think when the changes were made then as well in the second half, when Chris Farrell came on, he went to do a switch and it dropped the ball again, and there was just different things, but we just didn't seem to be, I suppose, right at the tempo in the second half. Like James said, you go in at half time, yep, we could have been up, but it was there for the taking. But I think the French came out a different side as well in the second half. So probably a combination of individual errors and a little bit of assistant error. Like the line out wasn't great, and I think the French defence of the line out, is in the first half they put 6 in to defend that maul, the line out maul straight off the right on the 5. So they had their homework done. Now if Ireland had gone off the top of that line out, then it would have been a completely different situation, because they had nobody out to defend. So the French really had their homework done, and I think were good value for the win in the end.
And James, looking at some of the analysis pieces in the papers today, they're making the point that the Ireland of kind of 2 years ago under Joe Schmidt, 2018, when they probably hit the peak of his tenure, seemed to be really good at converting these opportunities when they presented themselves. And I think Peter O'Reilly in the Sunday Independent today makes the point that he would have fancied the 2018 team at the point when Robbie Henshaw scores that individual try, and then not too long afterwards Ireland are in good field position, that they would have probably converted the chance and taken their time and been patient, while this team seemed to just make individual error after individual error when they had that pressured period inside the French 22.
Yeah, look, that's an interesting comparison. I guess I can see where Peter's making it, but I think that if we look back to how we were when we were playing under Joe Schmidt, that we were box kicking it too much and people were complaining and they were giving out about the rugby, and now it's been turned on its head. There has been a little bit of box kicking, yeah, but I think it's been more of an onus on the players to make the decisions out there, and I think that it's been a better brand of rugby than we played before. So it's really what people want, It's like, do we want to win games, or do we want to play great rugby, or do we want both? And it's so hard to get that balance right. I do think that we were unlucky in certain opportunities in the game. I think Fiona mentioned it there. We had the chance just before half time when Johnny makes a decision out in the field to go for the corner. And you're going up against a side who are defensively coached by Sean Edwards, who has been immense for Wales in the past couple of years, and we know what they can bring, but the Irish guys should have expected that they're going to really target this here. You know, they're really going to go for us. So it's a different attitude, I think, that the players had as well. I think that it's a flip that normally we would take those 3 points, and in hindsight, might have been the right thing to do. And if you're comparing oranges and apples for me, you know, I think I get very frustrated when you kind of hear those comparisons. Oh, with Joe, we would have done this, and like I've talked about it, we get so frustrated with what Joe did, and he had his power plays. I think we have to entrust in the players. I do think that Andy Farrell does need to bring a bit more of a game plan, and not more of a game plan, but more of a structure to tell the players a bit more to do. I think off broken play, that's when the leaders and the decision makers can make those calls. And if we're going to the corner, we're going to the corner, play different things. But again, it's the individual errors. It's down to those errors of the people at this level. It's unacceptable, I suppose. But look, it is frustrating for everyone involved.
Well, Fiona, Andy Farrell's had 5 games in charge now, and it was always going to be a little bit tricky in terms of coming off the back of a World Cup, going pretty much directly into a Six Nations Championship and trying to implement your ideas. But in terms of what we've seen in these 5 games, is it an improved brand of rugby compared to what we were playing 12 months ago?
Yeah, again, the comparison thing, like, I mean, to be honest, as an Irish person, I want us to win and, you know, win whichever way you can, really, you know. So, yeah, and people, you know, deciding, well, it would be better if we played better, if we did something that looked a little bit different. And I'm not going back to 2018 because I think it's a completely different setup now, but like, winning is winning, and winning tournament rugby is about winning. Like, if you look at the way England played yesterday, like, it was, you know, it was dour really as well, but they won, and they've won the Six Nations on the back of that, but they won. And like, Eddie Jones hasn't dramatically changed his style over the last 2-3 years, so they're sticking with their game plan, which is winning for them by and large. So does the brand need to change? I don't necessarily think it does. I think it, like James is saying, individual errors yesterday, you know, I think, you know, Gary Ringrose is a huge talent that we didn't have. I think Henshaw did really well at 13, you know, but there was just a couple of pieces of the jigsaw not quite there yesterday, which would have allowed us to play a different brand of rugby. You know, Larmour in at full-back potentially allows us to play a different brand of rugby, and more heads-up rugby, more playing what you see in front of you. And I think we'll know more at the end of the next 3 games. I think it'll be more of an assessment as to where we're at. But I suppose new coaching ticket, you hear all of that, but like, you know, Wales have new coaches in since the World Cup, Italy, France, and ourselves, and ours isn't so much a dramatically different setup. Obviously, Mike Catt is in as well, but so everybody has had the same piece to work with, apart from England and Scotland, you know, who have been relatively settled in their backroom team. So I think everybody is still feeling the way they want to play, or that they can play, playing to their strengths. And, you know, Andy Farrell's obviously been around the squad long enough. He knows where the strengths are, but he wasn't afraid to make changes in terms of bringing in Connors, bringing in Keenan. So if he hadn't have done anything, and if he hadn't changed, people would be complaining that he hadn't changed or that he hadn't tried anything. So I really think, you know, it's great for them that they have another 3 games in, you know, close enough time to see where they're at come the next year's Six Nations. And I think a lot of the other teams will be the same as well, and that they will look towards this autumn period now to gear up for next year's Six Nations. And I think then you can have a legitimate conversation around where they're at and what brand they're playing.
James, Stockdale took a bit of flack last night, understandably, because he should go down on the ball. If he does, we don't cough up that try towards the end of the first half. Some people were saying, look, this is evidence that he can't play at fullback. But the thing is, to me, that was an error that could have happened if he was on the wing. That's an error that could have happened if he stepped a couple of feet in field and was effectively standing in midfield. That was more of an individual error than an issue with Stockdale at fullback. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, I think so. I agree with you in that. I think he's kind of been scapegoated a little bit. Look, he'll hold his hand up himself, I'm sure, and say it wasn't his best game at all. And his form has fluctuated a little bit over the past month, perhaps. But look, Rob Kearney was talking yesterday before the game, and he had said it takes a few games at this level to actually establish yourself as an international. It's one thing playing provincial, but you've got to play continuously at this level, at that international level, and against quality week in, week out. And this is a chance for someone for Andy Farrell especially, to put maybe a bit of faith in Jacob, give him one or two more games with Wales on Friday, see how he goes. And if he doesn't step up to it, then look, he's given him a chance, rather than dropping the first time. I do think there's pressure there. I think Hugo Keenan's been superb on the wing, naturally a fullback in it, so he could be a switch. Jordan Larmour mentioned there as well, and James Lowe might come into things as well. So look, there's players there that we have quality wise. I think in terms of if we're looking at Jacob himself, I think that Andy Farrell should back him a bit more and just give him a bit more game time. I think it's wrong just to throw it all out after one or two games. And yeah, he might not have had his best game yesterday, but hopefully he'll get given a chance to dust himself off and try and change that perception on Friday. Yeah, because Fiona, trying to find an option at 15 has been an issue really since Rob Kearney was falling out of the Ireland picture, and they tried Robbie Henshaw there against England at the Aviva Stadium for a single game, almost with the World Cup in mind last year. Jacob Stockdale, because of Jordan Larmour's injury, has been entrusted with the fullback position for these last two games of the Six Nations. Hugo Keenan, in theory, could fill back in there. Andrew Conway could probably swap from the wing, maybe with Earls or Lowe coming into the team in a couple of weeks. It's not that Ireland aren't without options at fullback, but probably someone has to be trusted in that position, at least until Jordan Larmour comes back from his shoulder surgery.
Yeah, and Larmour wasn't it straight away either. And, he has to come back from shoulder surgery and to make his way, back into the Leinster team and back into this team. And, looking at the stats from yesterday, Stockdale was still our top carrier in terms of, I think he carried 15 times, made the most metres. So when you're getting the ball most, you are more likely to make more mistakes as well, in that he has the ball more often. The couple of glaring errors were there, but we could see that he is a devastating attacker with the ball in hand. So absolutely, I'm agreeing with James. I wouldn't be throwing him out at all with the bathwater, and I think that it's whether he's there or whether he moves back onto the wing, he's certainly a potent attacker. Has he been at his best of late? No, he hasn't. Has he been struggling a little bit for Ulster? Probably. But I think that certainly I think he should be there in the squad, and there's there is competition for places, and when players play in the position as long as Rob Kearney did and did it so well, then it's going to be a natural evolution. It will be the same at 10. When somebody eventually takes over from Sexton, when there's people in positions for a long time, they play a certain way, and it takes I suppose it takes time for somebody else to come in and to put their own stamp on it.
Yeah, and it's difficult as well because we had two very good defensive fullbacks over a prolonged period of time with Gervin Dempsey and Rob Kearney, and you almost forget when they were so defensively solid that successors had to be found, and these are young lads who are getting a chance at senior international level. I'm sure Stockdale will continue at 15 for Ulster too. He says it's his preferred position. Of course, our rugby coverage is brought to you with thanks to Vodafone, team of us, everyone in. James, when it comes to James Lowe coming in, I mean, we saw him running at the captain's run last week at the Aviva Stadium in the full Irish tracksuit. It's just a matter of days before he's qualified now to play for Ireland, and he's going to come into contention in the next few weeks to make his debut. Do you think he goes directly into that team, or will he have to wait his time a little bit?
It's going to be an interesting one because Andy Farrell's had him so involved in those match day squad, or just outside match day, the training squads, the additional players that are there. So he's pretty much done everything bar take the field, So he's grooming him for something, and I think that if people think that we need something else or need that little bit of X factor or a finisher, a different quality, James Lowe certainly has it, and he's done it for Leinster. So for him to wear the green of Ireland, I'm sure would be exciting for all Irish fans. Who he goes in for at the moment, I don't know. You mentioned Keith Earls is coming back there. We can't forget about him, and Conway's there, and what Hugo Keenan hasn't put a foot wrong. These guys, it's tough, and the competition's there, and that's why he's got to be in the top of his game to actually push it. I guess if you have a question over James Lowe, it could be his defence. If you're trying to pick something out, he's maybe slipped up once or twice for Leinster, but again, you take a bit of that if you're going to get that X factor from someone on a certain day. Personally, yeah, I think that he is going to jump in. I think the first opportunity, you got to throw him in and see how he goes. You know, we're in a World Cup cycle, so it's a time to try players now rather than bring them to a World Cup and see what happens. Now's the time to try things. Now's time to try different combinations, different players. Fiona's mentioned that certain players won't be around the whole time, so when do you blood these guys in? When do you play them? Now's the time. You know, you might lose a couple of games, yeah, but you'll find your way. There's no point in winning Six Nation after Six Nation after Six Nation, coming to a World Cup and then falling short and falling as we've done in the past couple. So I think that they'll bring James Lowe in and they'll give him a shot from the start.
Fiona, just to change the conversation to the back row, it's incredibly competitive for anyone to try and get in. I was watching Peter O'Mahony's press conference this week and he was saying he'd love to be playing, but he's accepting that there's guys in great form and he has to play a role within the 23 as things stand. You look at it that when Ian Henderson comes back from suspension, he could well slot back into the second row, which means Tadhg Byrne, who's barely put a foot wrong in the second row, a lot of carries last night, becomes an option at 6'2". It's a fiercely competitive area, but is it going to be very difficult for Peter O'Mahony to get back in now, given these young guns have taken places during this tournament?
I know, it's really, really exciting. I always love the back row and looking, just the competition that's there for it is fantastic. I mean, I think Byrne was good yesterday. I think Stander was exceptional yesterday. Both with his carries and his steals, his work rate, absolutely fantastic. Connors and Doris a little bit quieter, I think, and perhaps just it was a step up for them as well. Playing Italy in at the Aviva one week and then playing against like Aldry and Olivion, who were just. I mean, they were absolutely magnificent yesterday. I think it was 27 tackles or 20-something for both of them anyway. Huge, absolutely fantastic. So I suppose that was a step up for them. Personally, I think Josh van der Flier is... I still think that he has the edge on Connors, but obviously I'm not picking the team. I think he's a little bit more about him and a little bit more experience, but again, they're pushing each other. And then to get back to your question, you're looking at Peter, I suppose, fighting for that sixth spot or that bench spot, and he has proven time and again, like when he his cameo off the bench last week was fantastic. He put himself about yesterday, didn't have, I suppose, huge amounts of time. It will be hard, but that's a really good situation to be in. Is Byrne is he a back row? He's certainly somebody that you want in your in your 23, and I think, look, it's fantastic to have such strength in numbers in the back row, but then when they're on the pitch, that they have to put it in, and dare I say, we were outplayed probably by and large by the French back row yesterday. So it's getting that right balance as well. And like Peter adds a lot. He adds a lot defensively at the line out as well. He has that experience that the others don't have. So huge. I mean, it's a great conundrum to have as to who you're going to pick. But you have to get the balance right. Obviously, if you move Byrne there, he's a line out option as well. And I don't see Doris, or I know they used CJ a little bit yesterday, but I don't. So it's all of that to take into account. So certainly interesting.
James, it's a hell of a balancing act, and I'm sure form is going to play a lot into this. And you even look at Dan Levy coming back last week, thankfully, after being out for over a year with his knee injury, and great to see he came through with no complications after that game against Zebre. I think Stuart Lancaster was saying it could be the new year before he's back at international level in terms of his fitness and form, but he will come back into contention again. Is there a proper balance at the moment, or is there three players that emerge for that back row for you currently?
Oh, it's such a tough position, and we haven't even mentioned Jack Conan or someone like Max Egan, who's out for the year now. But yeah, it's going to be tough. I agree with Fiona. I think Josh. I think Will's been very, very good now. I think he's been superb for Leinster, especially. And yeah, look, he's been put in that situation, and his attitude and the way he tackles and his technique is second to none, and getting off the line. Sometimes he does go a bit quiet. It's a massive step up, and I guess, look, we've been blessed that we've had Josh van der Flier there, and as you mentioned there, Dan Levy in the past. I think Josh could come back into contention, especially on Friday, given the way the Welsh have played. CJ, I think, has made his own from when he's had the critics. saying you need to offer a little bit more. He has done. He's answered time and time again. And for the sixth position, I don't know. It is that balance. It's what you're looking at. Like Pete drifted off a bit and then answered the call, got the pressure put on, and had to make an impact, and came on and did make an impact and made a statement. And that's what you want. You want the players pushing themselves week in, week out, and not just to be content and can't just rely on that you're going to be selected every week and not look over the shoulder. There has to be someone pushing you, and that's the great thing at the moment. And you can move things around, and there are liner options. I don't know who I'd put at 6, to be honest. I'd kind of nearly go about who I'm playing against.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, proud supporters of Movember. Gentlemen, let's mow.